since I asked guests to like send in questions, one of the first ones that I reviewed, he's like, I feel sorry for you, doctor. Like, Sam's dumbass is going to ask some stupid fucking question and then not listen to your answer and then reference like something wrong that you said later. And he just really like stripped me down and made me seem like the biggest idiot in the world. And so after that, I like over prepped a little bit.
Oh,
where I like, I was like,
I'll show you who's an idiot.
Yeah. Like, I got your book. I have like little, read through, I got annotations and everything.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. I even I tried to highlight stuff that's important that I wanted to remember, like in the, like Garrett Ryan, your name right there in the beginning. Good start. I don't forget that,
And I highlighted my favorite parts too.
Oh, wow. This is great. Honestly, when I'm also teaching, students never prepared this much. This is awesome.
Oh,
all right. So
I thought these 2 pages were just incredible.
Just one word not highlighted. It's like, oh, okay. Well,
I did forget a word or two in there, but also deeper in the book, I like key points. It was, Sam, do you want to give us like a proper introduction? Lead us.
Yeah. Okay.
Like talk about why we're here.
Oh yeah. Hey guys, this is Forehead Fables podcast back again for our 3rd episode with Dr. Garrett Ryan, expert on all things ancient Greek and Roman. And he has come out with his 3rd book on the subject. This one's called Leaky Aqueducts. I fucked up.
Really,
dude?
Rough start.
Damn it!
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's. I told you I prepped for it, and I messed up the entire intro.
You're in your head now.
It's leaky. Okay.
Can you finish it, Poob? I lost
aqueducts,
all confidence.
battle pigeons, and mystery cults, and more frequently asked questions about the ancient Greeks and Romans, by Dr. Garrett Ryan.
I noticed you didn't put your doctor at the.
Yeah, I filled that in.
What's up with that?
I feel like it's trying too hard, to be honest. If you put it there, it's like, oh, what's he trying to hide? So he's a doctor. He's better than me. I think it's better just to go with Garrett Ryan and then drop the PhD in the about the author section.
Oh, okay. Well, I just feel like as like a history, like once you get into that academic realm of history, you kind of do have to come in dick swinging with the PhD. I feel like you do have to just go like, I'm a doc.
Yeah, what does PhD stand for? Pretty huge dick.
That should be in the about swinging? The author.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
I have a PhD.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else about me, just like that one line.
Yeah.
I should have some bling of some sort, just like a necklace that has the PhD on it or something. Yeah. A very large ring.
Yeah. Go even showier.
Even showier.
Yeah. But that would actually be an awesome necklace, the Priapus necklace, like that Roman god with the big penis. That would fucking rule. Until you actually take off your pants in front of a date, and she's like, "That doesn't."
Yeah, like look,
you're not lining up with you're not lining up with the necklace you have chosen.
Yeah, like leave the necklace and go away. Yeah.
There was actually, hold on, to start this off, because you immediately were like, they always bring it to a sexual place. There was a guy that wrote in that I'm not able to play his message because there was a slur in it, but he did say it was about a related god to Priapus, and I thought it was a joke at first, but he said the god's name was Mutinous Tutinous. And I was like, and I like Googled it, and sure enough, there's a Wikipedia page for Mutinous Tutinous. Is that a real dude?
So this is a Roman god, right? Like a very early Roman god, an archaic one.
Yeah.
I think this is an epithet. Is this associated with Mars or something? Honestly, I don't know offhand. It's one of these kind of crazy, off-brand early Roman gods who had like a festival and priests and stuff, I believe. But that's definitely the best name of all the Roman gods.
I think so.
Really cool.
Yeah, that is, because at first I was like,
a band name.
I know. Well, it's so close to like Rootinous Tootinous.
Rootinous Tootinous, yeah, it sounds incredibly made up.
Yeah.
Mutant makes you think of Magneto.
It does, yeah. Honestly, I have no deep Rootinous Tootinous knowledge whatsoever. I wish I did, but
I'm not going to demand, because I'm not a doctor, so I can't make demands of other doctors. But a Mutinous Tootinous video might be kind of cool, I think. everybody deserves a little bit more mutinous tutinous knowledge in their life.
Just no explanation, just like that, mutinous tutinous, an exclamation mark, and no other explanation, and kind of
Just
charge.
He had a PhD.
He had a PhD. Wow. Yeah. So coming out the gate strong there, actually. Obviously, I'm not prepared for this podcast if I don't have, a deep stock of mutinous tutinous lore, at my disposal. But
all right, guys, that's the end of the episode.
No,
he doesn't even know about mutinous tutinous.
Yeah, I should have handed back my PhD.
It doesn't sound real.
He's a fraud. Doesn't even know about
like
mutinous tutinous.
I know. Is it like? Do you think it's actually pronounced like that?
I honestly,
or is it like Mutanus, which is actually cooler?
Which is actually, it sounds even more like Magneto, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's one of these early Roman gods. They made some great names. A guy whose name was named Fufetius, as I recall, also, which sounds equally made up from early Roman history.
Love that.
But I wish I knew more.
Whoa, hold on, not to interrupt. I'm about to teach you something, Doctor.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Apparently, at his shrine, they just had a big statue of him with a giant phallus, and brides were meant to straddle the phallus before, I guess, their bedding ceremony or whatever, as a way of blessing, maybe. I don't know. That's pretty awesome. Thing. Yeah, as a fertility thing, which might mean that he was like I guess it was during preliminary marriage rites.
If they have one of those in my wedding, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. No mutinous thing for me.
You're not needed for this part, Pooh, but if you could just step back for a bit.
Yeah. We're going to go straddle the statue.
Yeah, if you could send me a link, actually, I need to look into this more. This might be real Told in Stone material, to be honest.
Well, I don't want to send you the link because it's just Wikipedia, and you're going to beat me with a hammer if I send you a Wikipedia link.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so now listeners know that they too can learn about.
Edited by the guy that asked the question.
It probably, this might have just been made yesterday.
This is a really deep fake. Yeah. I had not heard this, to be honest. I heard nothing about this, so I can neither confirm or deny rumors of mutinous tutinus's deep involvement in Roman marriage ceremonies.
Actually, there's a huge bibliography down here. So if this guy faked it, this is incredible. Incredible work. I'll email it to you. You can take
please
a look
do.
At it.
All right.
Very awesome. Okay, so we stumped the expert.
So I've
right
lost
off the bat.
all credibility. Yes. I'm done. Yeah, I know
1
nothing.
point us.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm ready now. Next one, I'll do what I can.
Yeah, lock in, dude. What the heck?
Now you can ask Sam any question if he doesn't answer it right.
And it's a cage match or something.
Lose a point.
Okay, so in chapter 1, actually, as I went through, I did make some annotations and stuff, and I had some relevant questions.
Let me pull up my chapter 1.
It's in chapter 2. You reference apartment prices.
Oh yeah,
and you're just they would cost X amount for a standard apartment, or this is how much senators paid and stuff like that. Was this kind of a consistent pricing throughout Rome's entire time period? Did they have they didn't have inflation or anything?
Oh, they did have inflation, actually. Or I guess more accurately, they had devaluation of their currency, which came to the same thing. So there was kind of slow inflation throughout the imperial era. So it cost, let's say, 100 sestertii in the time of Caesar might cost 150 under Marcus Aurelius. So slower than ours, but a real thing. Yeah. And then in the 3rd century, they had a series of crises. They had to pay the army much more, basically. And there was a series of usurpers who killed the previous emperor. And for those 2 reasons, they had just this massive outpouring of gold and silver to the soldiers. And to pay these guys, they debased the currency. They reduced the amount of precious metal in the gold and silver coins. People didn't trust the coins as much, demanded more of them. And this caused rampant inflation for about 50 years. So there actually was gigantic problems with the currency for some periods of Roman history. And these prices changed wildly as the currency got devalued and, reasserted or whatever else.
Huh. And so what would they do to bring the value up? Would they just pull coins out of currency or out of circulation and then melt them down, or?
Pretty much. They would try to just make a new coin. It's this is the new, better coin. That you shall use this coin. But often it's just as debased as the previous one, and so no one trusts it. this Emperor Diocletian had this edict of prices. It's like, you cannot charge any more than this empire-wide, but nobody listened. And so everyone just ignored this edict. It was a giant failure. But he tried. And they had the idea they could control the economy, but they had no idea what they were doing, really. So they just tried to print more money and hope for the best.
And you mentioned how much time was between like Caesar and Marcus Aurelius?
So Caesar is stabbed in 44 BC. Marcus Aurelius is 161 to 180 AD. So more than 200 years.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because like I remember my uncle buying a house for like $80,000,
mm-hmm.
and I'm like, there's no way I could get a house for $80,000 now, and that was in my lifetime. I'm not that old. People keep telling me I'm old, but I'm not. I can assure you I'm not.
Yeah, crazy.
Later in a couple pages later, this is chapter 5 now. You mentioned Milesian erotic novels.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Could you talk about those a little bit more? Yeah, Milesian tales.
Unfortunately, we don't know a whole lot about most of them. We have a fragment of one, or what's supposed to be a fragment of one in Lucian, I think it is. This guy wrote in the 2nd century AD. And it's this widow who seduces a young man, basically. It's very much in the, kind of the bodice ripper motif.
Go on.
But we know they were wildly popular. Supposedly, when the Persians captured this Roman army in the time of Caesar, they found all the officers reading these filthy novels. They found Milesian tales in their baggage, along with their swords and stuff. Clearly, this was like the porn of the ancient world. People would read this stuff, and it was so hot that they had to bring it with them on campaign. So we don't really know. The people who copied ancient texts didn't care about this stuff. They worried about Christian literature or classroom texts, highbrow stuff. They didn't copy out the porn of the ancient world. And so we don't have it anymore. It was all lost in late antiquity. We just have these few references to Milesian tales by people like Apuleius or Lucian. But it seems it was pretty steamy. Maybe not quite X-rated, but, stuff's going down.
One of the many things lost by the rise of Christianity, I'm sure. They wagged their finger at it. Like,
mm-hmm.
What the hell is that?
There's this one stand. Very on brand.
Yeah.
I tried to find a shirt that would fit for today, and this was the closest I could find.
I found this one says, "Do you even lift, bro?" in Latin, and it shows Hercules because I'm cool like that.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Yeah, awesome. Do you have any questions, Poob, or do you want to? I figured we'd circle.
Well, I think the porn stuff was definitely a big one we were all going to hit on.
Yeah.
And I do think your books do a great job of bridging kind of understanding that they're just people. It's like
mm-hmm.
when I think back to these ancient people, they seem so different. And then you read this book and it's like not so different than you and I.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my big takeaways from the early part of the book was just how disgusting Rome was, which also I never really would think about. And the parts about chamber pots being thrown out of windows onto people on the streets,
mm-hmm.
that would piss me off.
It
would drive me crazy.
It piss you on first, but
yeah,
but yes, it would have been disgusting. You would have smelled the city from miles away, because they did have the famous public latrines. They had sewers, but there was not many connections between those chamber pots and the sewers. So just shit on the streets everywhere, basically.
Also,
that was
the baths. You'd expect. I don't know. When I would think of these baths, I'm like, oh, what a luxury.
Yeah.
They sound disgusting.
Yeah, we don't know how often they changed the water. Probably when it got cloudy enough and disgusting that people wouldn't go inside, they would actually change the water. But Hadrian had a rule that the sick could bathe first. So everyone who was, had running sores and, a leg dangling, whatever, they'd be in the pools before you. And they can't have helped the water quality.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's gross, because it's people always go oh, it's the bastion of Western civilization. They had running water and beautiful communal baths, and there's always these paintings that were done way after
mm-hmm.
the fact of people just in what looks like spring water bathing themselves, right. And I'm there was little Snickers floating around in that water.
it's probably so hot and stinky in there.
Yeah, so stinky.
Well, and everybody, before they got into baths, or often you'd have yourself rub with oil first, and you kind of hop in with that oil slick still on your skin. So it'd be like, you know, Exxon Valdez had crashed in some of these pools, and it's just this like very thick layer.
It's hard to grab somebody in there too. I was a criminal. I'd go straight to the baths.
Yeah, the heated baths.
Right,
Dude,
right.
Yeah. There was actually a whole section in here that got me on. It had me doing independent research here on like how they heated the bath. Yeah. I was like, how'd that work? Mm-hmm. And then there was they would have the entire like the pool itself would be suspended over like a hollow area that they would sit there and pump a fire under and use it like a chimney and everything. Mm-hmm. What the hell? And they had, was that just dry down there, do you think? Or do you think it was just constantly dripping water? And it mentions in the book that it was infested with cockroaches and stuff. And
yeah, a lot everywhere seems to have cockroaches and
when
rats.
You throw your piss and shit all over the streets.
Mosquitoes, yeah.
Well, you know, and actually the Romans are responsible for bringing both cockroaches and rats into most of Europe. You know, they came from the east in both cases, but the Romans with their cities and their giant grain ships transported them far away as Britain. But yeah, like so under the baths, they had these enormous furnaces, all wood fueled. Actually, some baths had their own private forests because they burned so much wood, and they just used that forest for that bath. And so it would pump hot air into this dry system of tunnels called a hypocaust system that was both beneath the walls or both beneath the floor and inside the walls. And often it wouldn't be just beneath the bath. There might be like a part of the bath's wall that was exposed to it. It'd be like kind of like the sides of the pool more than just like underneath it, depending on what kind of pool it was. Often the pools are kind of built on top of the main floor of the bath, so it's easier to heat them from below. But yeah, it's just a dry, about 2 feet high, give or take, and then hot air circulates between brick pillars and then out through flues in the walls.
Huh. And they're saying like the baths get, correct me if I'm wrong, did they get so disgusting that they'd have like basically like the worst criminals have to clean them when they were done because it was just such like a horrible job?
Basically, yes. You know, there were a few really terrible jobs in ancient Rome that only slaves did. One was cleaning out the aqueducts, you know, which are filled with these like heaps of mud and stones. You got to go in there with the water rushing at you and trying to, you know, shovel the stuff out of the manholes. But the bads too, yeah, only criminals. If you really have screwed up, and you're not quite bad enough to be sent to the mines, the galleys. One of your jobs might be to become a public slave. You work for the city of Rome, and you scoop out all of the stuff, the ash, the cinders, the muck, the rat droppings that builds up in that hypocaust system underneath the floor.
Yeah.
Were the like elites at this time in their beautiful little villas? What was their toilet situation like?
Well, they had private latrines. We actually have one of the emperor's own latrines. Actually, two of the emperor's own latrines. So in Hadrian's villa in Tivoli, which is right outside Rome, he had this gigantic villa. I mean, it was bigger than the whole city of Pompeii, about 300 acres, this one structure or kind of complex with gardens all around it. And he had in the center his own private miniature villa that was ringed by a moat. He would pull up a drawbridge and he wanted to be alone. And so inside his little moat mini villa, at the heart of his main villa, was the Emperor's Crapper, which was this 2-seat latrine. So the room for two, with fine marble as the seat. You know, the walls were all painted with marble. There's a view of the lake from one side. And that was funneled into the palace waste system. We also have in the Vatican, actually, this wonderful red marble seat. It's also from one of the imperial palaces, we think, that was originally part of an imperial latrine. That became part of a papal throne later on. They didn't realize it was a latrine, apparently. So they made it part of like a medieval pope's chair.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That would be like, I know it seems like basically the wealth, you know, it's like 1% of the wealth. If I were a guy born on the streets there and I was having like shit thrown on me every day, like I feel like it would really motivate me.
Yeah.
I would become a criminal, probably.
Yeah.
I would do anything to get access to a latrine.
Yeah. Well, often they'd have them in the apartment complexes where people lived, but it was just the first floor, and it might be a 7-story building. And so you'd have to just have a chamber pod, basically. So yeah, it would have, it was pretty basic in a lot of in terms of basic amenities. A lot of clean water in Rome, but the streets are very much not clean.
Yeah. I think it did a great job of like unglorifying They're just like, oh yeah, I would love to go, back to Rome for a week or something. It sounds horrible. The whole thing sounds horrible.
You would just die. My last chapter in that book is what you would do if you were a time traveler, what you would bring. And we talk about that in a little more detail later. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have smallpox. Everyone's dying of smallpox. They have rampant malaria. Rats are probably biting people left and right. I mean, it would have been really unpleasant. So even aside from just it's smelling like, shit, and being just dirty and cramped, and with chamber pots raining down from the apartment windows constantly, it was just a dangerous place. High crime as well. After dark, you were going to be mugged pretty much, unless you had a giant entourage of slaves with torches. You were guaranteed to be mugged, basically. So yeah, it was not I wouldn't want to be there for any time, let's say. It'd be fun to observe, from like a safe distance, but it was a very
levitate or something.
Yeah, it was a pretty hostile environment.
I mean, I think we might have touched on this last time, but like I've even been to the Biltmore Estate.
Oh yeah,
which is like the largest residential property in America, owned by
North Carolina or something.
Yeah, and it's owned by like one of the wealthiest families of the time. And that was like turn of the century, like 1900, I think. And it's even then, I would rather just live today than in that big house, because they didn't have no TV, they didn't have no air conditioning.
No.
What about video games?
They didn't have video games either, dude.
What?
And so like even like Mr. Awesome with his moat surrounded toilet and everything, like his life sucked. Like even though it was super wealthiest, their life sucked in a way.
Like with the lake view, when I heard that.
That actually did kind of pique
That ain't half bad.
As long as I don't have worms or smallpox or something, and I can bring back a bar of soap, maybe.
I wouldn't have thought too, like, that the weather was so horrible. Like, I don't know. I'd always just kind of thought, like, Mediterranean breeze, like beautiful. It's like it's either burning hot or freezing cold, and there's bugs everywhere. It's just.
Yeah. Don't go to Rome in like July or August. It's the worst place on earth. It is, 100 degrees every day. That stone just radiates heat.
They give you this much water.
That much water,
No ice.
No ice. Yeah, it's pretty grim.
God. To go back to the baths for a second, it was mentioned just for a second. You mentioned that, most people, they might show up and take a bath like, I guess like once a day or something like that. But then you mentioned that Sybarites using the Roman baths 7 to 8 times a day. What the hell is a Sybarite? Is it a Sybarite?
Sybarite is right. There was a Greek city called Sybaris in the south of Italy that was famously luxurious. They taught their horses to dance to the flute, which sounds really difficult. They were famous for their gourmands. They had all these elaborate meals. One guy went to Athens with an entourage of like 200 cooks. So they became kind of a byword in the ancient world for luxury, excessive luxury. And they were wiped out by their more virile, less luxurious neighbors, of course. It's all a morality tale. But anyway, so we just kind of use this word in English, too, to describe kind of these excessive luxury. And supposedly some Romans just spent their whole day in the bath, just kind of lounging in the pools, getting rubbed down, getting scraped off, rubbed down again. I don't know what they did. You could spend a whole day there. They had like shopping centers in the baths. They had lecture halls. They had libraries.
If they were clean, I would get that, because it does seem like one of the better places.
Yeah.
But I guess, I mean, like they don't have germ theory.
So no, they don't. Yeah, so it's like,
I think I would befriend whoever was in charge of like when the bath got turned over and they put new water in. And I'd be like, just send me a letter or something and just let me know when it's going to be flipped over. And then I'll show up right when the new bathwater comes in.
It sounds like too, there's like a ton of them, but like, were they just crammed like to the gills in there? Or?
Yeah,
like oily body on oily body.
Public pool in summer.
I mean, probably. There's kind of a daily ritual to the whole thing. But when they first heat the baths up, it's actually too hot for people to get in. The water is boiling hot when they turn the furnaces on for the first time. So they wait until they're just cool enough to get in. They ring a bell. That's when, if you're in Hadrian's time, all of the lepers and cripples show up and they bathe first.
Oh, great! Here come the lepers.
Right. You probably outrun the lepers if nothing else.
Yeah.
And then often there's different hours for men and women because they don't want that, because it's nude, of course. They don't want that mixing if they're too hard nosed about such things. But probably they were pretty crowded. The big ones could hold thousands of bathers at the same time. A whole neighborhood, pretty much. But we don't really know. Most people probably go in like mid-afternoon because the Romans are very much morning people. They do most of their work before the lunch break. And then they might reopen for a couple hours in the afternoon, but after about 4 or 5 p.m., everyone's tends to be either at the baths or at dinner or just not working.
Yeah. Oh, wait, actually, hold on. I have a great question that's relevant to that. It's a great segue if I can find it. Oh my
cool.
God. Holy crap. Am I going to find it?
Better be a great question.
It is, dude. It's a good one.
Now.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Let me know if you can hear this.
I've got another question because I'm feeling very inquisitive, but what was their nightlife like? Like, did they have traditional night shift jobs like we do now? Or did they have nightclubs, maybe? Or, I don't know. What was going on after the sun went down?
All right. That's a great question. So there actually isn't as much nightlife in ancient Rome as there is even in early modern cities because the streets are so dangerous after dark. I mentioned before how you get mugged if you're out and about without a giant entourage of slaves. So the idea is that if you're rich, you want to be partying at somebody's luxurious mansion. You get invited to a dinner party. This might go on from our 7 p.m. till 2 or 3 in the morning, where there's many courses of luxurious foods. There's entertainers. There's dancing girls from Spain, and it becomes, it can become a wine-soaked debauch pretty quickly. Often does, if we can believe our literary sources. But if you're not that wealthy, your only real source of nightlife is probably the local tavern, tavernae. And these things, many people don't have kitchens, any kind of kitchen in their apartments. They're too small. It's too much of a fire hazard to have, any kind of a hearth in these places. So they'll eat out every night. They'll have just a simple prepared meal, like a bit of bread with oil on it, or a kind of stew or lentils or something. But then they kind of chill out with their neighbors in these taverns, just kind of lounge around them and talk. And this makes upper crust Romans kind of nervous. They think they're being seditious. They actually outlaw, hanging out in taverns sometimes. But it happens. And the more hard-living upper-class Romans will go slumming, but they'll kind of visit these taverns, these plebeian taverns, and pick fights with people. So Nero does this famously and gets beat up a few times by plebeians who don't recognize him as the emperor. So yeah, it's kind of a range of things. You have these private get-togethers up on the crest of the hills where the rich tend to live. You have all neighborhood gatherings around the taverns, kind of where there are clusters, people live in the immediate area, and then people like Nero who are out looking for trouble, cruising the different streets of Rome. And there, of course, are brothels as well, which are pretty much everywhere to judge from Pompeii. But it seems like there's quite a bit of nightlife, but not too many people on the streets just wandering because it is so dangerous.
Yeah. It's weird how it seems like they prioritized, they have communal bath areas. They have these communal water fountains and stuff. And then, but in terms of entertainment, it's weird that you would have to go to a fancy private villa to get any partying going on. And it's outside of, and they do have the taverns, but you said the people in power were I don't like that so much, them having fun down there.
Yeah, I mean, there is mass entertainment that's paid for by the elite. So both the games of the Colosseum, those are free, given by the emperor as a gift to the people. And so you show up, and as long as you're lucky enough to get a seat, and you have to kind of...
No ticket fee?
No ticket fee. But it's hard to get... You have to know somebody to get the tessera, which is the little token you use to get in.
Okay.
And so that can be some difficulty. But people hang out at the circus, which is the NASCAR of the ancient world. There are races almost every day. And people will, if you have free time, a little bit of money, you'll kind of go in there, hang out with your friends, bet on the races, which is illegal, but everyone does it. So there is, and so are the beds. The beds are also paid for, the biggest ones, by the emperors. They're built by the emperors, and admission to them is free too. So they are thinking about how the other half is being entertained. But when it comes to, where they're hanging out at night, it's in a very different sphere.
Yeah. There was actually something that I don't think was covered in here, but it was something that I had heard about. I think I was reading about it a couple months ago, and it was the world's biggest spectator disaster, sporting disaster, and it was a big wooden coliseum that some guy put together right when the gladiator games became legal again, and he was like, I'm going to put together a little coliseum really quick.
That's touched on in this book,
Is
right?
it? Maybe I just...
I mentioned, I think, very briefly. I have a question about whether people were attacked by lions in the Colosseum or hit by missiles, when they're in the stands. And yeah, so it was a freedman, a guy who was putting on a show, and he built this temporary amphitheater to showcase, this troop of gladiators. And because it was a temporary wooden amphitheater that was not properly reinforced, there was like 30,000 people in the stands, and it collapsed under their weight and killed apparently tens of thousands of them. Which is, of course, cataclysmic.
All at once is insane.
Yeah, they were just caught up in the collapse of this giant structure.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind for the audience, like I think 9/11 was like 3,000 people. I was gonna say 3 people. There's no way. 3,000 people.
What perspective you're looking
at. Yeah, I mean, of course, both hideous disasters. But yeah, it was terrible, and people were talking about it in Rome, which is why we know about it.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine like 20,000 people in one wooden stadium, and then there's in my town there's Doak Campbell Stadium, big brick stadium, and when there's when it's not even filled up, you can feel the whole building shifting under weight. I couldn't imagine 20,000 people, 30,000 people in a wooden structure, and how much that bitch was swaying back and forth, dude. It was going crazy before it even collapsed.
Yeah, I mean, it was before the Colosseum was built. There were things like this built in Rome itself. People who were running for office, for example, wanted votes, would build these temporary theaters or amphitheaters. And there was one supposedly that was actually 2 theaters that swung together on giant wooden wheels to make an amphitheater, which is crazy. So that kind of thing wasn't unusual, but usually I guess they knew enough about what they were doing. They didn't fall to pieces during the games. This guy miscalculated somehow, or his builders did, and so that caused this terrible disaster.
Also, I know, like, speaking of like fun for the people, you talk about festivals. Were those happening like pretty frequently, or like what was it like big annual ones and then just like every month a little festival, or what was going on?
I think of it kind of like, until pretty recently in Europe, in like Catholic Europe, there are saints' days all the time. And there are like the big church festivals, and everyone is off for work on the big festivals, Christmas, Easter, that kind of thing. But the saints' days that are every day, it's just sort of is happening in the background. You're getting on with your life. You're doing your work. It's not a big deal. It's kind of the same way in ancient Rome, where there are big festivals like, say, Saturnalia, that everyone's part of. Everyone's off work. Everyone's having a good time. And there are all these minor festivals that matter if you're a priest of this or that, or if you're, in the upper crust and you're, kind of part of that world. But for the most part, people are vaguely aware of it. It affects the calendar. Like there are days that are bad luck, that to do certain things like, make a business deal, to get married, whatever else. And that's on the calendar officially. You can't get married on this or that day. If it's, a festival of Pluto or something, an unlucky day, or if the Romans lost a battle 200 years ago on that day. So in that way, it does affect your everyday life, but usually people are just working, almost every day. There's probably figure a few weeks equivalent off for the big festivals, and the rest of it's business as usual.
Okay.
Oh wait, this one's not even relevant, but here's a question sent in from Anony Mouse.
Dr. Garrett Ryan, tell me a little bit about your new book and why it's better than this podcast.
Why would you laugh at our patron, dude?
No. It was his articulation was really spectacular. I mean, I know better than this podcast. That's strong words, but it has its merits, I would say. It's 45 questions, each with a short and hopefully entertaining essay attached to it. A lot of them come from my YouTube channel originally. Some were asked me by students years ago when I was still teaching. But it's kind of a sampler plate, a wide range of topics that discuss how the Greeks and Romans are both a lot like us, as Poob was saying, but also really, really different in interesting ways.
Yeah. Awesome. You danced around that question perfectly. You could have
masterfully done.
Yeah, you could have seen me cry right there. But
you spent 5 minutes roasting Forehead Fables.
Yeah.
And let me tell you
100 reasons why it's better.
Like a manifesto.
I'm glad you asked that. I've been waiting for that question.
Yeah, just roll my sleeves up. Like, okay.
Yeah.
With this being your third book in the, like, I don't know, would you call this like a series, I guess? Because they are,
Yeah, it's kind of a trilogy. It wasn't meant to be from the beginning, but this is probably the last one I'm going to do like this. Okay. It's been fun. I enjoy the format. It's kind of, very punchy and bite-sized. But I'm moving on to other kinds of books now. It's like I did one, I spent a couple months back in 2023 following the whole northern frontier of the Roman Empire from Scotland to Bulgaria, just kind of walking along all these Roman forts and stuff. And I got a book about that coming out next year called On the Edge of Empire. No, go ahead, sorry.
An Age of Empire?
On the Edge of Empire.
Okay. On the Edge of... I thought you said Age of Empire.
Which is fantastic games. Amazing games.
Yeah. Those are incredible.
Yeah.
I'm sure the book will be...
I mean, it won't be Age of Empires 2, but it'll be
Age
something.
of Empires 2, yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad we can all agree.
I mean, yes, absolutely.
I was going to ask, like, with this being the third, do you find the process to get easier every time, or do you put more pressure on yourself to... make the next book, or like how's the process been?
It's a good question. It's both easier and harder. It's easier for me to research and write these things pretty quickly now, I would say. For a given question, I think I'm more efficient at finding the information I need and putting it into those 3 or 4 pages. But kind of the reverse of that, the flip side of that, is that I get too efficient sometimes. I kind of lose some of the fun of writing. I make it too streamlined. It's like the answers are shorter now than they were in the first book. And there's less kind of dwelling on the details that make these answers or the ancient world so interesting. So I guess that with discipline comes a certain cost. And that is, losing the magic a little bit. It's too professional almost. I've done it too many times. That's part of why I'm just doing 3 books like this, I think.
Do you think you'll ever branch into like historical fiction or anything? Or because I noticed in this one, you might have done it the last 2. I'm sorry, I don't really remember. But you'll go kind of like imagine yourself walking through. You take it through a perspective that's like just a hypothetical perspective. And I didn't know if you were kind of planning on eventually writing a book kind of totally in that format.
Yeah, it's definitely more fun for me as a writer to, create these scenarios and try and put yourself in the mindset of someone walking through Rome 2,000 years ago. And actually, I am working on a fiction book now. I don't know if it's ever going to be published. It got really weird, honestly. So we'll see what happens to it. But I have thought about it, yes. So we'll see, if my publisher thinks I'm being insane with this book.
You think you'll go to sci-fi soon, or...
I mean, honestly, it's less of a jump than you might think. It's the same imaginative process. We think we know so much about the Romans, but we are recreating their world every time we're, kind of evoking it. I think that sci-fi, it's the same deal. Obviously, you're inventing more, or you're putting it in the future, or in an alternate timeline, whatever else. But I think there is a lot of parallels between that writing process and historical fiction. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Hell yeah.
Do you want to do another guest question?
Yeah,
I don't have anything to segue into, so that would be
sure, bring it on.
Quick, easy segue.
Yeah,
it's not really a segue.
It isn't at all. Hey guys, do you mind if I do a quick, efficient segue into the next thing?
Yeah. You're more derailing, but go on.
Do you mind if I bring the conversation to a fucking screeching halt for a second, so that we
more
can...
book talk? Okay.
Enough of this bullshit. Let's get to
No, you mentioned science fiction, and then this guy brought up, like, when people think of Archimedes, they're always like, hey, he's like a mad inventor. He's like the Nikola Tesla of his time. This guy had a great question about Archimedes. Sure. This is from Brennan.
Okay.
Was that Archimedes guy even real? Like, who made the death rays and like earthquake thing? Because I heard he got just jumped by some Roman soldiers and killed, but like, why the hell did he not use that death ray or whatever?
That's actually a fantastic question. So
he was real. That guy embodies this audience so well. That is exactly the type of dude that I want to watch this show.
That was the platonic ideal of the Forehead's Fable listener.
Yeah. Use your death ray, dumbass.
It's not wrong, honestly. So yeah, he's a real dude. We're pretty confident about that. Actually, okay. Cicero finds his tomb about a century and a half after he dies outside Syracuse. So yeah, he's from Syracuse in Sicily. It's this very large Greek city that is besieged by the Romans during the Second Punic War. It's the war with Hannibal, so around 200 BC. And he invents all of these devices to fend off the Romans. And the supposed death ray that this guy's talking about, it's supposed to be a series of mirrors that focus the sun's light into this incredibly concentrated beam that can cause a ship to burst into flames from, like a mile away. It's almost certainly not true that this is possible. I think like Mythbusters tried to do this at some point, and they got piece of paper to start singeing, and that was about it. It wasn't very impressive. But he did invent for sure this thing called the ship claw. This is this giant almost like the claws you see those machines in an arcade that would come down from the walls and grab Roman ships that were too close and like haul them up by the stern. So they were like dangling in the air, and
that's awesome. Yeah.
He invented apparently more other war machines that could throw darts farther than the Romans' catapults could. So he was incredibly inventive and a brilliant geometer as well. But when the Romans take the city, they're besieged, they're sacking everything, and they see an old man who's just drawing figures in the sand, one of more of his geometric figures. And a soldier demands that this man come with him to see Marcellus, who's the general besieging Syracuse. And Archimedes kind of waves him away because he's too invested in his geometric proof. And the Roman soldier, in good Roman fashion, just stabs him. He's like, okay, screw this. I don't have time for this guy. And just kills him there on the beach. So Marcellus, the general, wanted him alive. He wanted him brought in because he knew how brilliant he was. But apparently Archimedes, the tale goes, was so invested in proving this geometric theorem or whatever it was that he couldn't be bothered to save his own life.
E equals MC.
He was so close. Yeah. So real dude. Very impressive guy.
You mentioned the Punic War. This guy actually sent in a question about the Punic War.
Oh, yeah.
The second one. This is from Landon Winter.
Hey, I'm getting really into the Punic Wars with my buddy and I on a historical war game called Hail Caesar. Going through some of the scenarios, it really seems like a wonder that the Romans won the Second Punic Wars. So how exactly did they win the Punic Wars?
That's a great question. I mean, honestly, they should have lost. Any other ancient civilization would have folded after losing as many men as the Romans did in the first three battles against Hannibal. At Lake Trasimene, at Cannae, they lost like tens of thousands of men at each of these battles, the cream of the crop, almost all of their legionaries. There's really two reasons they didn't fold. One was the incredible dedication of the Roman aristocracy to keep fighting. They were a very, I guess, kind of cohesive band of men. They were all tied to each other by marriage, by longstanding in Rome, and for various reasons, they were committed to the fight. There was no faction among them, or not a large faction, that wanted to surrender. The other reason is the nature of Rome's dominion of Italy involved a lot of alliances with other peoples. And these guys didn't pay tribute in money, they paid it in men. So a lot of Rome's allies were committed to sending X thousand men in a given year to Rome as sort of this human tribute. They would fight for Rome for a year and then be returned to their city. And so Rome had this huge reservoir of manpower to draw upon, even after they lost so many in these cataclysmic battles. So a combination of the Roman aristocracy's cohesion, I would say, and this vast reservoir of manpower. Though even that was almost tapped by the end. Their allies have said to the Romans, we can't send any more guys. They're all dead by the end of this conflict. This one had a very gifted general, two of them, Fabius Maximus, the delayer, Cunctator, who refused to engage with Hannibal because he knew Hannibal's a better general. He's like, okay, you're better than I am. I'm just not going to fight you. And so he would kind of shadow Hannibal and prevent him from taking Rome's allied cities and just wear him down. And this worked eventually. The other general was Scipio, the famous Scipio Africanus, who finally defeats Hannibal in his home territory at Zama near Carthage and ends the menace. But yeah, they should have lost. Any other city, when you lose half of your fighting men in one battle, just says, okay, you got it, bro, you win, and throw the towel in. Yeah. The Romans just have this will to fight and the men to do it.
It's actually kind of a genius tactic to just go, this guy's going to kick my ass. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to trail him.
Yeah.
And make sure that he can't at least sit there and get a lot of resources or anything. Hopefully just be a thorn in his side and then run away as fast as I can if he turns around.
Oh God, he's looking this way. Yeah,
right. This actually, there's a follow-up question by a guy named Toshido that is relevant to sieging, if you know anything about that.
Sure.
All right.
Hello, Dr. Ryan, Sam, Poob. Thanks for taking my question. I've lived in Sicily for a few years now, and after visiting places like Syracuse and Messina, I've always wondered, what happened the day after one of these ancient cities fell? What was life like for the survivors and the incoming occupiers? And were people literally just moving into other dead people's houses? Thank you. And of course, one obligatory final question. Just how gay were they?
Someone watched the last episode, I see.
Yeah.
It's a good question, and it's one that has a couple different kinds of answers. It depends on who you are in a besieged city, what your fate will be. If you're very important, you're likely to be either not ransomed, be captured by the Romans, but treated fairly well because you're going to be a human trophy in their triumph. They want to show you off as the captured general or a captured aristocrat. And often they'll find ways to keep you in some kind of power because you're useful as a power broker. But if you're just an ordinary person, a city captured by the Romans or the Greeks, anybody really in the ancient world, your life and your property are forfeit. So they're going to come in. They will probably enslave you if you're not killed in the first frenzy of looting. And you'll be hauled off to a pretty awful fate often. If you're a Greek and you're educated, the Romans often will use you as a tutor, for example. Be sold to become some rich guy's kid's tutor. But if you have no skills, or if you're like, a Thracian or an Illyrian or something, and you'll just be sent to work in the fields or the mines. So yeah, it's not good to be in a besieged city. You want to get out if you can, because if it's taken, you're going to be enslaved, if not killed, almost always. If, however, the people in the city give up quickly, like before the siege really gets going, there'll be terms, and they'll say, okay, you'll pay this much money. You might surrender, one of your leaders, but we're not going to actually destroy your lives. So if this all happens the way it's not supposed to, and everyone dies or is enslaved and they're expelled from their city, people do move in. Often the Romans will have allies of the people they just took over, who are their allies. Sorry, enemies of the people they just took over, who are their allies, and they'll give the land and the city to this rival city's people, or they'll install a garrison there. This happens in Jerusalem, for example. After that's taken by the Romans in AD 70, they install a big garrison on the site eventually. So it's not a good place to be in a city that's just been captured by the Romans or anybody in the ancient world, because the reward for the army that set out this siege is the stuff of the people inside.
Okay. The like during the Punic Wars, like Hannibal, I was looking at his like main body of his army, like a huge chunk of it was just people from Gaul.
Yeah.
Like, would they, hypothetically, if he had won, would he have been like, there's your city, guys, like move on in? Or what would they stand to gain from it other than just they share a common enemy and that's why they're hanging out?
Right. Hannibal probably would have, had he won, turned the clock back about 100 years on the Romans. Because the Romans were, at that point, a very new power. They just conquered most of Italy when he showed up. The Gauls who were with him were from what's now northern Italy. They called it Cisalpine Gaul, like where Milan is now, that part of the peninsula.
Oh, okay.
He would have given all that to them that had been conquered by the Romans. He said, okay, this is now your land. The Romans are gone. Don't worry about it. And all those allies of the Romans, those guys who were obligated to send thousands of men to every Roman campaign, he said, okay, you're free now. Congratulations, you have your city back. So for them, aside from like the loot they would have gotten from sacking Rome, for example, it was more a matter of having independence from this new aggressive power that showed up in their midst and seemed ready to conquer the whole Mediterranean world, which of course it does once Hannibal's gone.
Yeah. Huh. I thought they were probably from like, I guess like modern day France or something like that. I didn't realize that they were just from northern Italy. No,
there are Gauls all over the place. Yeah, they were there too, most famously.
Yeah,
but the same culture, kind of the Celtic culture, stretched from Ireland to what's now Bulgaria. It was this huge strip of kind of Celtic-speaking peoples.
Yeah, it's I have a hard time placing, like, it's such a large swath of history. I have a hard time, like, I guess envisioning, I guess like where the frontiers of the Roman Empire are, like over the course of its history. And like I had no idea that Hannibal was attacking them. I don't want to say at their infancy, but pretty early on. Because when I think Roman Empire, I go, it's huge. It's taken up half the damn world. And I just naturally thought that's when Hannibal attacked. It was the Titans fighting, and it doesn't really seem like it was.
It still was kind of Godzilla and Mothra. These are two really big empires that are slugging it out. The Romans have all of Italy. The Carthaginians have most of what's now Western North Africa. So a lot of resources at both at their disposal. But the Romans, people are struck by in the ancient world both how fast Rome rises and how long its empire lasts. And so are we as historians. The Romans expand so quickly in the 3rd to the 2nd centuries BC. They go from being just an Italian power to kind of dominating the entire Mediterranean basin in 5 generations, give or take.
Yeah.
And then it lasts for 500 years, and even longer in the East, and there's another 500 years in the East. So it's really, there's no one answer for how it happens so quickly. The Romans conquer so much so rapidly. They get lucky to some degree, but also they're just very good at what they do. And that ally system I mentioned before, having all these guys with a lot of manpower, and having also this very committed aristocracy in which military victory is the political coin, allows you to advance to the consulship or any other high-ranking office. Those 2 factors drive a lot of it. And then once it's in place, it just kind of lasts. Local elites are on board with the whole program, and it takes Attila and friends to spoil the whole show, really.
I think like what I'm most impressed by is like the logistics that they're able to carry out that in like such what I consider like kind of a primitive time. Like where is this? Was this like
the engineers?
Yeah.
Like
that was insane.
There's a section
constructing a bridge in like 10 days or whatever.
Yeah. It went from just trees in the forest to a bridge across the Rhine, a half-mile long in 10 days. And it was just, he didn't need to do this. There's a Caesar, of course, on the Rhine. He's just kind of flexing at the Germans. Like, look at this, I'm going to build a bridge in 10 days and then tear it down. He didn't need the bridge. I mean,
he just built it?
Just to show he could. That's it.
Awesome.
And it probably worked, honestly, because it's like, holy hell, he just crossed the Rhine in front of us. They can do anything. And so it's a nice way of, it's not soft power exactly, but it's a way of showing we don't have to fight you to destroy you.
Yeah.
Should use the claw machine in the
exactly right.
Our machines that we have.
Yeah. There's there's a section here that talks about the Pantheon's columns.
Yeah.
Being made from Egyptian granite that were shipped down the Nile from the quarries of Aswan and Mons Claudianus.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge distance to be shipping giant columns.
Yeah.
Like how the hell they even, like people always go like, oh, how'd they build the
18
pyramids?
Mm-hmm.
How'd they pick up those fucking columns and put them on a boat and float them all the way down there at like whatever date this was? It just seems like a huge undertaking for, I guess, like a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, it is the Iron Age. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, they had 2 claw machines. No, so it was. So it's all slaves do the work in Mons Claudianus is in the eastern desert of Egypt, where it's 120 degrees for like 6 months of the year. It would have been a terrible place to. Well, be worked to death, basically. So you'd have people who were condemned to these quarries being watched by soldiers, and they would use specially hardened tools to cut out, granite's a very hard stone, cut out these 40-ton column shafts, even 100-ton column shafts in some cases, and then drag them probably over walkways in the sand, not rollers, but just walkways that were smoothened out. You have teams of hundreds of guys pulling these things across the desert to the Nile. They go on a barge and there to Alexandria, and from there on to Rome. But it would have been months of work. And some of the things they moved, there's an even bigger column in Alexandria now at the tip of Egypt, which is called the Pillar of Pompey. It was raised by Diocletian. It's, I think, a 300-ton granite column that comes from the same place. So 300 tons, that's the size of a very big obelisk, just carved out from the middle of the desert and hauled across the sand to the Nile and then down, across the delta.
Like, did they always just like make a path and then drag it? They didn't use like, I don't know, like a fucking sled or something, like a cart?
Well, they did use sleds sometimes. We actually have from earlier Egypt, from Pharaonic Egypt, these reliefs that show like giant statues being moved on these wooden sledges. And so it may have been a really big wooden sledge, as opposed to just a smoothened walkway. Probably would have been easier, actually, less friction.
Yeah.
But we weren't actually totally sure. Yeah, we assume some combination of, graded walkways, wooden sledges, and they'd probably moisten both the wood of the sledge and the walkway to make the less friction.
Yeah. Actually, I think there was a moment in here where you're talking about like in the drawing that there was a guy standing on the very front of the sled with pouring oil to like make it more slick, reduce friction. It's kind of awesome.
It is, yeah. And I get that job, be the oil guy, and the guy is towing the giant, statue behind you. But yeah. So very simple technology, but with enough manpower, almost anything is possible. And that's what the Romans find out.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed. And then you mentioned it was done with slaves, and I was like, that's not that impressive. I guess if I had a bunch of slaves, I could probably build anything.
I like the chapter about like, could could the Romans have made the Great Pyramid? And when I first read it, I was so confused because I thought you were asking, like, did the Romans make the Great Pyramid? I'm like, I don't understand the timeline of any of this, I guess. And then I thought it was like a twist on, like, did the aliens build it? Well, actually, I think the Romans built the Great Pyramids. But then I got what you were putting down, and that was a good chapter. I mean, it was basically like they could have, but it would be different. And, they wouldn't have done it in the same reverence or.
Right. It would have made no sense to build one, pretty much. That they only build the pyramids in the Old Kingdom because it's, the God King's tomb. It kind of allows him to ascend to the gods. It's worth your labor and all of your 20 years of toil to build this gigantic monument to guys, not only your king, but also in a sense your savior. The Romans, having none of that ideology, would never have invested the resources in building for their emperors, something like that. They built some pretty big tombs in Rome itself, but nothing on the same scale because just there's no sacred reason to do so.
Could they have built the Sears Tower, though?
Just like crazy, I did do something about if they could have built a skyscraper, and they didn't have, of course, structural steel or anything, but you could build a really tall structure out of just, a tower out of just stones, 500 feet if you wanted to. You got to go up that thing on steps. So before elevators, skyscrapers are a really bad idea because you got to climb the damn thing.
Chamber pots
raining down. Exactly.
Yeah. Dude, imagine getting hit by. It's one thing to get a chamber pot thrown on you. It's another to get hit by a turd going at like terminal velocity from like 50 stories.
You're just driven into the pavement at that point. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have no chance.
Yeah. You mentioned tombs and stuff. This guy, Mr. Zach here, has a great question about Roman funerals.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm out here delivering caskets, and I was wondering what a Roman funeral would look like, especially compared to a modern one. And would us humble patrons get funerals, or would it just be for the elites like Sam and Pooh?
Yeah. So everyone got a funeral, but if you're like Sam and Poop and you're a man of note, then you will get a much better funeral. So actually, you'd be buried at night if you're very poor because you didn't have the ostentation to justify your funeral procession going down the main streets. So if you're a big deal in Rome, let's say the emperor himself, you're the biggest of all deals, it's actually quite an elaborate process. You'll have kind of a wax mannequin made of yourself, like a Madame Tussauds sort of thing, on top of your actual casket. And that'll be brought out into the forum. And you'll have your heir, your son, whoever else, deliver this very long oration about how great you were, about how you lived up to the ideals of your ancestors. And there behind the guy speaking on the stage will be all these people wearing the death masks of your ancestors. These wax masks, or wax cast masks anyway, that show, the face of your grandfather, your great-grandfather, and so on back as far as your family goes. So you're kind of embodying the whole lineage that's there behind you, or behind your successor. Once this oration is done, both the casket, the bier, is hauled forward on this gigantic cart, we think, with all of these hired mourners. You have people wailing behind you. You actually hire mourners, women who would tear their hair out, to shovel their clothes, to make a big fuss in the streets. They actually have musicians sometimes, and at once there'd be mimes and like clowns who come up in the back, which is kind of fun. There was a guy, Vespasian, the Emperor Vespasian was famously cheap. And so there was a clown that came behind his, entourage, asking everyone how much his funeral was going to cost. And in the guise of Vespasian. So they could have fun with these things too. It would end, though, in a giant funeral pyre. So you would bring this to a huge pre-constructed heap of wood with a lot of incense from Arabia built into it, so it wouldn't smell like charred flesh. And then you would light this pyre up. It would burn for days sometimes. The flame was so large. At the end, the ashes would be collected. You wrap them in asbestos sometimes, an asbestos cloth, keep them from being separate from the other ashes. Gather up the asbestos cloth and put it in a funeral urn, and then put that in the tomb. If you're less wealthy, you're still cremated almost always between about 200 AD and 200 BC, but it's much less elaborate. There are public burning grounds you go to outside of the city, the Ostrinum, and you're cremated out there with a smaller procession of ancestor mask-wearing people, the wailing women, and maybe a clown.
Only one clown.
Only one clown. It's not very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a very public occasion.
What about like a step beneath that? Let's say you're like just like a borderline homeless person that dies, no family.
Right.
Is there even like a public service or anything that would come drag your body out and throw it? Or
well, if you're not quite homeless, but you don't have much money, you'll join an association. There are funeral associations of people who will, for a monthly fee, commit to giving you a funeral when you die. And so you'll be part of this club of, like, let's say it's 300 guys who are all like day laborers from rural Italy. And if one of you suddenly kicks the bucket, all of your fellow association members will get together, throw you a great funeral, have a feast in your honor, and then buy you a little tomb. Often you'll have like it's like almost like a condominium for the dead, these little niches about 2 by 2 feet, and they'll put you in this little niche with a slab showing who you were. Now there is a booming market in used funerary urns and slots. I think they probably kick you out if you don't pay your dues once you're dead for too long. But anyway, so yeah, there are ways, even if you're not very rich, to have a decent funeral in Rome, to kind of join one of these associations, these fraternal societies that guarantee a decent funeral.
That's pretty
so
interesting.
If I had like a little clay, like wax version of myself, that would be like pretty Caesarly. Like if they would have this, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's
like a little guy like this.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's not quite the Muppet vibe, but I like where your head's at.
Okay.
But so they have like a little cabinet in the atrium of all the masks of their ancestors, and they're cast, at death. So when someone dies, you have some guy who hurries forward
So
with the
creepy.
wax to. We didn't know how lifelike they were. We never actually found one intact, so they might have just been clay or shattered later on, or even wax and just haven't, survived. But
sounds like such an awesome funeral at the higher up level.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
clowns, music, women being like, "Oh my god, I loved him," and I've got some ideas.
There you go.
I think the coolest like modern day equivalent is, have you seen those? I think it's like
I know exactly what you're gonna say.
Is it like a Caribbean tradition where they at like the wake they'll pose the body, like they'll dress him up and like pose him, and then people will take like pictures for Instagram with the body like he's still alive.
My family will never let me do something like that, even if it's my wishes.
Yeah. There was a great one of a guy that liked riding his motorcycle, so they had him just on his motorcycle.
Oh wow!
At his wake, and people would just come up and take pictures. I'm like, that's so cool.
It's kind of Roman.
It is. I think New Orleans too has some pretty great funerals. Those are kind of Roman. They're very festive in some ways, and you bring the party wherever you go.
Yeah,
a celebration. My grandparents are just the most dull and sad.
It was a real downer, honestly.
It was a total bummer. And it's just I wouldn't mind to have a little bit of more spectacle.
Yeah,
there we go. I mean, I don't know if we hire mourners these days, but you can try.
On Craigslist, get a bunch of random people there.
You tear your shirt at least 2 inches. Yeah.
I like how they would hire people to tear their hair out. I'm like, I don't think I've even ever seen someone that distraught where they tear their hair out.
You got to pay for that kind of action,
Yeah, that's only performative mourners. That's a new level of distraught.
Yeah. Like, I'll uncomb my hair for you, but
Yeah. Let's see. Hold on. I got some good questions in here.
You got a natural segue.
I got guys, hold up for a second. I got a real smooth segue. This is from Tom.
Hey, Dr. Ryan. Glad to have you back on. I was wondering what your favorite graffiti from Helium or Pompeii is. My favorite is the one outside of a bar where 2 friends described having bad service, but then spending 105 sestertii most agreeably on whores. Thanks.
That's awesome.
That's a great question. We have thousands of graffiti from Pompeii and Herculaneum, and a lot of them are political. Vote for this guy, vote for that guy, because they were as bad as we are about political signs everywhere. Let me think. There's one announcement for a gladiatorial fight that's coming up. That was probably coming up right when the time of the eruption. And it says, so-and-so is throwing, a big gladiator bash. There'll be this many pairs of fighters, on and on and on. At the end, like in bigger letters, Vella erunt. There will be awnings. Like, there'll be shade, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That one's pretty good. Yeah, there's a lot. There's another one, a guy who claims to be the doctor of the emperor. He gives the name of the emperor's doctor. Says, I had a very satisfactory shit here, and it's in a latrine. I shat quite well here. So we probably not the actual emperor's doctor writing this, but someone put in this guy's name. So that one's pretty good too.
I think in the book you mentioned a gladiator that I think his name was like Rufus or something, and he was like,
yeah, all
ladies
the girls
love Rufus. Yeah, all the girls love Rufus. And I'm like,
it's Rufus writing this. Yeah,
absolutely. You know it's Rufus, first of all, and you know not a single woman has even thought of him once.
Yeah, no,
but I feel like the entire, like a huge part of like your books and your YouTube channel is kind of like, when people think of Rome, they always think of like, oh, he's crossing the Alps with the elephants and like the big, incredible things. And your channel and books really try to bring it down to like what the everyday man is doing. And I feel like that is much more in line with like, that sounds like some shit that would be on Twitter, like from a MMA fighter. Like, ladies love me, dude. What are you talking about? And it's, between that and like some of the Roman soldiers, like in Hadrian's Wall, you can see graffiti in the bathrooms where they just draw like a cock and balls. Yeah. And it's like, dude, they're just like us. But they probably have like tapeworms and stuff. They're a little bit like us, but
like us if we had terrible hygiene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. That's as Pooh was saying earlier, it's kind of the basic fascination of history that there's so much like us, the same dumb animal. But at the same time, the culture is so different. You have all these kind of crazy mismatches between the psychology and the culture. And I think a nice way of kind of talking about this kind of high and low culture. So in Ostia, which is Rome's port, there's this very elaborate fresco in one of the latrines. Often they're very well decorated. And it shows the 7 wise men of Greece kind of in council, talking about some philosophical issue. And some Roman has captioned them with like bathroom humor, each one. So like one says, Chylon, he's this Spartan elder, teaches one how to fart silently or stealthily. That's there in Latin beneath this very elaborate, Greek fresco. So again, it's a very human thing almost, the instinctive, bringing them down a notch.
Yeah. They kind of rock, I think. No.
Yeah, they're fun. They're relatable. The Romans.
Yeah, relatable, I think is definitely the term. What do you think? You keep mentioning in here like Herculaneum. I've never heard of that city, but I've heard of Pompeii. Mm-hmm. Is that just like a city like that got taken out at the exact same time from the exact same thing?
Yeah, it's one of Pompeii's neighbors, and it's buried even more deeply than Pompeii, and so it's better preserved. It was smaller. Pompeii probably had 30,000 people, give or take, city and territory. Herculaneum might have had 5,000 people, but it was a much richer town. A lot of wealthy people had villas all around it. And it was right at the base of the volcano. So when it was buried by these pyroclastic flows, it was buried about 50 feet deep. And sediment that turned to stone pretty quickly into almost like a tufa. And so when they was uncovered in the 18th century, it was found incredibly well preserved. A lot of like the carbonized furniture from Pompeii comes from Herculaneum, or the doors even, that's also Herculaneum. Pompeii is buried much less deeply and with kind of a looser sediment. And so things rot there much more quickly than they do in Herculaneum. There's less preserved stuff.
Yeah.
Do you wish selfishly that the entirety of Rome had been covered by pyroclastic flow so that there'd be more preserved things?
I'd say I wish selfishly that no one found Pompeii until 2020, because when they found it in the 18th century, they just kind of dug for statues, destroyed everything, and left with no record often of what they were finding. So I wish that we had better archaeology for a lot of the best sites we ever dug, because people like the guy in Troy, Heinrich Schliemann, just cut a giant trench through the whole site trying to find the lowest layers. Now there's nothing left of the ancient city. He just kind of hacked this giant trench right through it. And so
that sucks.
Give 100 years later, we probably wouldn't do things like that. So,
or like you touched in here about the guy looking for, what was the which one? It was one of the ancient 7 wonders that the guy.
Oh yeah,
it's dedicated his life. Was it the Artemis or?
Yeah, it was. It was a John Turtlewood, a very Victorian name.
Very cool.
Yeah, he spent like 7 years trying to find it, and he got malaria like 17 times. He got his legs broken.
Horrible.
He's attacked by bandits repeatedly, but he finally found it. So kudos to him. but yeah, we probably wouldn't do what he did. He used like steam shovels to dig it up. He dynamited a church on top of this temple to clear the ruins. So we're a little more careful.
What he had to.
We're a little more careful these days with archaeology, but he got things done.
Talking about the wonders of the ancient world, you do say in here, if the Hanging Gardens of Babylon existed, do you not think that they did? Or is there only like, is it just something where people go like, I heard about them gardens, they sound really cool? Or is
They're hanging.
Is there
They're
nobody?
hanging,
Yeah, is there no like actual, I guess, firsthand accounts of someone going like, here I am standing at the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and by God, they're beautiful. These are truly one of the wonders of the world.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Some butterflies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they're a wonder, but they're fairly cool. Yeah, it's like a postcard. Here I am.
Yeah. This is like the seventh coolest thing I've seen right here in the ancient world.
Maybe eighth, ninth. Yeah, so we don't know, honestly. We have much later descriptions. The guy who wrote that list, the famous list of the seven wonders, a guy named Antipater, I think it was, he wrote in the 2nd century BC, at a time when those gardens are probably long gone, if they ever had existed. So all we have is sort of rumors of these gardens from much later on. It probably was some very elaborate garden built by like Nebuchadnezzar in his palace quarters, but as they're described by our Greek sources, we don't have any like Babylonian accounts of them. They probably are kind of exaggerated, like they're hanging in air. They're like an artificial mountain with these plateaus of palms and
it's probably
bushes,
just like a
flowers.
wicker basket with like a fern in it.
Yeah, like one nice path between some flowers.
Yeah.
So probably more exaggerated than made up, I would think. There was something there that was very elaborate, but people were more impressed by the walls of Babylon, actually, than by the gardens. It had these gigantic mud brick walls. You could drive supposedly 2 chariots side by side on top of the walls because they were so thick.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
The Colossus of Rhodes is also super badass. I wish that was still around. Do you have one that a favorite, or one that you would love to see in its heyday more than the other? I mean, I'm sure you want to see all of them.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think that the one that would have been most impressive to us was the statue of Zeus at Olympia. It was big, it was like 35 feet high, but I think just the effect of it. We're used to seeing marble statues in the ancient world that are kind of pitted. They're not painted anymore. They're worn down. This was made with skin of ivory and gold. The rest was gold. And with glass eyes. And it would have been in this very darkened space with this pool of oil at its base to kind of reflect the light. So it would have seemed almost supernatural, I think. All the glow of that ivory and that gold kind of reflecting off that oil with just a few lamps to light it and the temple doors, 30 feet away. So I think it would have seemed much more impressive, despite it not being maybe as much of an engineering feat as some of the other wonders.
Yeah.
Much more impressive to us than the buildings might have. But they were all, they were pretty wonderful. I think they labeled it up to the billing.
I do have a fantastic segue, actually.
Well, Sam, I was going to ask you if you had one that you really wanted a favorite ancient wonder.
Me? Hold on. Let me think here. Hold on. Ancient wonder, you said? That's an excellent question. No, I actually think, dude, I think the Colossus is so cool just because it's like, you're in our fucking territory. Bring your ship in. And I think I would have put a big set of truck nuts hanging from between the legs. So with the claw hanging from Archimedes, just in case they got a little bit ornery on their way in. I would snatch one in every 5 ships just to let them know that I could.
Just to keep on their toes.
Yeah. Actually, they would be swinging like pendulum. And they would just knock. Yeah, they would be knocking ships left and right.
There was an old story that the Colossus was astride the harbor. So you have to sail between the legs to get into Rhodes. It probably wasn't how it worked because it would have just fallen over if that was the case. But yeah, that would have made your job easy in that case.
Yeah.
Really cool.
This guy has a great question about what your favorite... Well, I'm going to let him ask it. Here you go.
Hello, Sams and Dr. Garrett Ryan. What do you believe is the most interesting engineering achievements of that time? And why is Poob gay?
I'll answer the second part, but you can answer the first.
I would not speak to Poob's sexuality, but...
Thank you.
Yes. Wow, there's a lot of contenders. I actually did a video a few years ago about kind of overlooked Roman engineering wonders, kind of mega projects people have forgotten about. I would say the most impressive thing you can still see, in a well-publicized place is the Colosseum in some ways. That it's this arena that held up to 50,000 people. It could be emptied, we think, in just a few minutes. It was that well organized. There were 80 entrances, had this incredibly elaborate system of internal staircases. It had water fountains. 2 tiers of cages and tunnels beneath the arena that can bring up everything from palm trees to lions to cages of bears. So really, really cool. Kind of the deeper cuts, less well-known ones. There's it was called the Iron Gates Highway. Trajan built a road along the Danube through this sheer rock gorge. And he actually had to, because the cliffs were so sheer, he cut the roadway into the side of the mountain, kind of all along this river, the Danube, kind of hanging out from the cliff face, with a series of locks alongside so that ships could kind of keep in time with the road. He built a bridge right next to it that was almost a mile long on 20 piers, each 70 feet tall. The sheer scale sometimes of Roman achievements is pretty impressive. They were actually defeated sometimes. They tried to dig a canal through the Isthmus of Corinth. It's kind of in the middle of Greece to cut off shipping time. But apparently the rock there has these splinters that kind of fly in your face and blind you. And so they kept getting blinded when they tried to cut the canal. Nero tried it, and that didn't work out super well for him. But anyway, I think there are so many examples. I could go on and on. I did a video, actually. I have a video coming out just in a couple weeks about this place called Las Medullas in the north of Spain. It's a giant gold mine. And they used 7 aqueducts to channel water to these huge reservoirs. And then they would release the water and it would wash down the slope, stripping away all the sediment above the gold-bearing layers. So it was these giant controlled floods. And it created this enormous valley that's still there today. It's like a moonscape of eroded rock and blasted earth made 2,000 years ago by these giant mining operations. So many, many examples you could use.
Yeah.
We love gold mining.
Yeah. Do you think there's any gold still left there?
Oh, probably. It's just not really efficient to get at it. It was kind of, yeah, right.
Prospector 2.0.
We just went on
Spain.
Yeah, we just came back from a prospecting trip to northern Georgia.
Oh.
Where the first gold rush was
here.
Right. And we went looking in 3 different creeks and rivers, and we found nothing.
We didn't have the manpower.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
If we had 500 guys.
If we had slaves like they had back then.
At least one reservoir, you could have achieved wonders.
Yeah.
Some sort of mechanism.
Yeah. If we had Archimedes and we had a bunch of slaves, I'm sure we could have gotten something. But to go back to the Colosseum, there was a section in here where I thought it was just general knowledge that they flooded the damn Colosseum and had naval battles in it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were like, it's so damn small. There's no way, unless it was just 2 canoes fighting, that it would have been impressive at all. And there's really not much of a egress for dumping the water back out.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other misconceptions people have about the ancient world, or things where they're like, that's fact, that kind of piss you off?
Oh, I mean, that's my job, right? Is finding these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the Colosseum, if you saw Gladiator 2, which, I don't really recommend, honestly. I
haven't seen it.
First movie was amazing. Second movie, not so much. But there they have this epic naval battle in the Colosseum. There are sharks swimming left and right. That is amazing, first of all. But yeah, it's just not really possible. You could have maybe managed 3 or 4 feet of water, not much more than that. It would have taken forever to fill it. And draining it, as you mentioned, would have taken, days to get it out of those tunnels beneath the Colosseum. They had lakes for that stuff. They had artificial lakes outside Rome, on the edges of Rome, where they could have giant naval battles. And they did at least 3 or 4 times with tens of thousands of men. As you're mentioning to this engineering wonders question again, there was Claudius drained this lake, this volcanic lake in the center of Italy that was like a crater. So they kind of cut a channel below the rim of the crater to release some of that water. And before they did this, they had a naval battle on the lake, just because it's what Romans do, right? They have a giant gladiatorial competition right before they do something impressive. And there were thousands of men involved, supposedly, 2 teams of ships that were ramming each other in this lake, and condemned prisoners fighting on the decks on both sides. So they could do these epic spectacles, just not in the small confines of the Colosseum. I mean, think about other legends about the Romans. I mean, there are so many about the fall of Rome, about why it happened and how it happened. Like the one about the lead pipes, for example, that they're all poisoned by their water because they had lead pipes. That's not true at all. Partly because the water didn't sit in the pipes, didn't have time to build up poisonous lead. And also because Roman water is very hard. So they could build up this limestone layer inside the pipe and kind of shield people from the effects of the lead. She knew it was poisonous lead. They knew that it wasn't good to have lead cups, for example, to drink from all the time. That's one. There are so many others. I'm sure I'll come up with more as we talk.
I feel like lead poisoning is probably the least of their fucking worries, considering all like the
yes.
gastrointestinal issues and
Exactly.
smallpox and
plagues.
Yeah, plagues. And you said like if you go outside at night, you get instantly mugged.
Pretty much, yeah. Lead's a relief, honestly, after all that.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, like poor people would have to have their funerals at night. I wonder if any funeral processions ever got mugged. They're just like, look, I didn't get this is a time of mourning, but
cool little thing of sand. Give me that.
But seriously, give me your wallet.
Yeah.
Take the ashes and run off.
That was cool too. I mean, it's not really super related, but that you talked about the sand in the Colosseum that would have gladiator blood spilled on it would be used in rituals and stuff. It's just
it is also astounding how like the gladiators themselves being like the blood on the sand has significance. They themselves would have celebrity, and then you mentioned that they really weren't that privileged of a class of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird having that contrast.
There is. It's kind of like until pretty recently how most like boxers were treated, for example. Like you were lower class by virtue of being in a blood sport, but you were a celebrity at the same time. People knew who you were, even though your social status was quite low. And so it's
like the OnlyFans model.
It is kind of
ancient day.
And in a sense, the gladiators, what they were is more important than who they were. They were embodying courage. Virtus is the Roman word. Courage, manliness. In the face of death. Fighting for their lives and for some kind of idea. And so, even though they were personally seen as being the lowest of the low, condemned criminals, slaves, barbarians, what they were doing was important. And so, if they shed blood, in this very heroic, manly act, that blood had kind of not magical, kind of sympathetic virtues. That it was the essence, sort of manliness. Even their sweat was valuable.
Essence.
Yes.
They're like Skeksis.
I like how one of the gladiators. You said like on his tombstone it says like the ref let him get up and then he killed me. That was like
it was a bad call. That's on his tombstone.
Fucking ref got me killed. It's such an awesome thing to have on your tombstone.
Less spiteful.
It is. They had a pretty elaborate code of conduct. You weren't supposed to have any dirty blows. You had to fight by the book. It was seen as it almost was kind of like boxing or almost not quite pro wrestling, much more dangerous than that. But there were clear rules to it. There were 2 refs typically, and if you broke the rules, you were not popular among the fans or your fellow gladiators.
I was shocked too to hear that the actors were so lowly. Like people, I'm assuming clowns were also looked down on.
Actually, hold on a second. We have a great question sent in that is very relevant to this. I think you'll like it.
Actually, be a segue.
The master of segues.
Hold on a second, guys. I have a great segue.
Segueing now.
Hi. My question is, why were entertainers seen as a lower class of citizen? Like everyone loves a funny guy. Why would you, make fun and belittle the funny guy? Anyway, love the podcast. Both this one and the Told in Stone one. Thank you.
Yeah,
there we go. A little validation for everyone involved.
Yeah, I was the funny guy, not as important.
Yeah, boss.
So the idea is that if you're on the stage, you are essentially a prostitute. Not physically necessarily, but you are prostituting your reputation. You are taking on someone else's persona, if you're an actor, and discarding your own. So if you're a Roman or a Greek, kind of the same idea. The idea is that your reputation is everything. That people know who you are, know your face, know your name. And if you throw that away, if by taking on another character, you are kind of disgracing your own name, your own persona, your own reputation. It's kind of an odd way to think about it, but to them in this very face-to-face society, repute is everything. And you can kind of compromise that if you appear on stage to the eyes of strange people and take on a different character.
So then how would they treat somebody like, I don't know, a puppeteer if it's like, I'm not saying this stuff, he is.
Oh, yeah, a ventriloquist.
You can wear a mask.
Ventriloquist.
Right. They stone those guys, but you can wear a mask, of course. If you're in a Greek play, you wear a mask, and it's probably because you're kind of taking on the persona of this person, but it also conceals your face. So if you appear kind of as yourself, probably because people who are mostly lower class get into this work in the first place, even though some people like Nero might have interest in it. It's just seen as being disreputable. And even if you have these kind of go-betweens, like it's not me, it's the puppet.
Yeah, I didn't know if like Jeff Dunham would get a pass because it's like I'm Jeff Dunham.
Yeah, right.
This is the puppet.
Maybe. I can't speak to that.
I feel like that. No, they probably beat the shit out of you.
He wouldn't last long, Jeff Dunham. 2 weeks tops, and makes your problem.
Yeah.
It is funny how much they look.
Traveler notes. Don't be
Jeff Dunham.
Don't be a clown.
Yeah. It is funny though. It's almost like how the looks maxers like look at people that are funny. They're like they're jester maxing and they think it's not cool. It's kind of it's very similar.
Yeah.
They're like the Romans.
There was a guy that I deleted his question because I was like, I'm not gonna use up your time doing that. But he's like, were there any like looks maxers back then? And like, did they care about like how they looked and stuff? And like, did they look in the mirror or anything? What kind of haircuts did they have? And did they have a flat top or anything?
Well, now you are just asking that question.
It's been asked.
And now I'm asking.
They were incredibly vain sometimes. I mean, the idea was that you're supposed to be a manly Roman, not care about what your appearance was, but everybody did. Again, if you're in this face-to-face society where everyone knows what you look like, you want to look like, well, you're kind of manicured, you're well kept up. There's a lot of debate about how much of your body you can shave legitimately. Like, can you shave your chest, for example? That's a big thing. If you're philosophically inclined, the answer is no. If you're most people, it's like, yeah, go ahead, tweeze it off. So there's a whole lot of both criticism of, but also kind of how-to guides about looking good in public. And people are accused of having like toupees, for example. The Emperor Domitian was been bald quite young. And if you look at his statues, you can see his toupee still. It's like a very thin line between his hair and the rest of his forehead. Caesar had a comb over that was pretty bad. He was also kind of not cool about him being balding in his 40s, so he would comb his hair over.
That's awesome. I always thought the comb over was kind of like a modern thing.
Oh,
it's very awesome that Caesar himself was. I wonder if he started it.
I mean, he didn't hurt it.
Yeah.
Insecurity is as old as humanity, and you see it all over the place in the ancient world.
I wonder if there's any people that saw him doing the comb over and they were like, "That's Caesar. He's doing it, and that's pretty tight now." Like, do you think he brought it into
balding guys all over Rome were like,
yes.
Yeah,
that's our boy. Yeah.
Time to shine. Yeah. I mean, it is true that emperors' hairstyles are imitated throughout the empire, at least in portrait statues. We can tell how old a statue is if it's of some random dude by his hairstyle, because it'll match the emperor's almost always. Because it's what you want to look like. If you're going to be anybody, important, in the public eye, you want your hairstyle, which might be kind of carefully curled, for example, or your beard, which is no beard, thin beard, bushy beard, to resemble the emperor's beard. And so like Hadrian brings beards back after like a century and a half or a couple centuries of beardlessness across the Roman world. Constantine then is clean shaven and everyone else is clean shaven. We don't know if it's just sort of a convention that people have themselves shown in this way that's kind of imperial or high class, but it does seem that the emperors and empresses are trendsetters. People kind of imitate what they're doing.
They had like Larry David Emperor. Do you think people would start like
shaving? Well, they probably had their hair very short. They wouldn't emphasize how much more hair they had than the emperor. That kind of thing.
That'd be awesome. Bald emperor.
It's like, well, all right.
You guys are walking around with more hair?
It's not okay.
It would have been awesome if they went through like a Victorian era where they had like big Van Buren mutton chops and huge mustaches that connected to them and stuff.
Curled hair that goes forward.
It did kind of. Lucius Verus, who's the co-emperor of Marcus Aurelius, has this like giant mop of curls. They like artificially twists. He puts gold dust in it too, apparently, just to make stuff look even more fabulous. People imitate this too. So they have these huge kind of wig-like mops of hair.
Yeah.
And women's hairstyles are even crazier. They have like, these kind of up thrusts in the front, these giant towers of curls that are like supported inside with wooden dowels. Yeah, pretty elaborate.
Yeah. There was, I think I got like on a segue here from No, this was from yesterday.
Segue.
This was a deleted question that a guy had, but then it had me so curious. and it was about like were there alchemists and stuff, and not just alchemists, but were there like just poisoner types? Like were there any like prolific? Like I'm a poisoner type. I'm a go-to guy where if you need someone murdered, I can murder for you.
Oh yeah, I mean there's supposedly in the time of Nero, there's a woman called Locusta who calls herself sort of a provider of medicines and potions, but is a poisoner who is used to kill the Emperor Claudius, for example, supposedly, because Emperor Claudius died after eating poisonous mushrooms that were kind of put on his dinner table. And the idea was that this Locusta, who actually is before his time, was this, kind of mistress of poisons. It's probably at least exaggerated by popular rumors, but we aren't totally sure. Oh yeah, I mean there are people who are assassinated by poison needles in Rome. They jab them with a poison needle and they run off and they die in the street. And in general, it's kind of the broader thing about what alchemy, that's of course a medieval thing, but alchemy is kind of a weird fusion of ancient science and ancient astrology, combined. And all of that comes from the Roman world. So they invent astrology, for example. To them, it's scientific. The planet's influence, the world in certain ways determined by our horoscope. And they assume that elements have sympathies determined by their natural properties. The gold has certain characteristics, lead has others, and so forth. They don't try to transmute lead into gold the way the medieval alchemists do, but all the techniques are pioneered by the Romans, often in Egypt, where they have kind of this interesting fusion of magic and philosophy and kind of medicine.
I meant more like alchemy, like potion making and elixirs and salves, and then they go this will make you fertile, and in reality, it's just like arsenic or something.
Oh yeah. We actually have these a manual called a Dioscorides, an herbal manual that goes through like hundreds of these potions. They're mostly for medical purposes, but of course the flip side is that if you know how to cure someone, you know how to kill them too. And there are all kinds of poisons. Supposedly, King Mithridates of Pontus drinks every day an antidote to all known poisons, so he can't be killed, by or poisoned anyway. Yeah. And then the story is he tries to poison himself at the end of his life when the Romans are coming from him, and he can't because he's had too much of his antidote. So someone just stabs him. But yeah. So it's a thing, and there definitely are people who are known, or at least are reputed to be poisoners in the Roman world.
That's pretty awesome. I wonder how you advertise your
yeah, right.
Your career.
Regular apothecary.
Yeah, nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Potions.
Yeah. Here's a question from Ashton.
Hey Sam, hey Poob, hey Dr. Garrett. I was just curious as to any crime underlord syndicate or anything happening back in the day, back in Rome or Greece, any cool crime lords that I haven't heard anything about?
Yeah, the question of organized crime is a tantalizing one. So supposedly before Augustus restores order in the Roman world, this is right after Caesar's dead, like 30 BC, there are professional guilds of criminals in Rome, like guilds of thieves, who are well organized and are terrorizing the city. But we know only that Augustus repressed them. So they existed, absolutely. We just only know about them in this one brief moment of disorder where they kind of surface and are visible to our historians. The problem is that our sources are so fixated in high politics on, who's killing whom, who's the emperor, who's the emperor sleeping with. And so we don't know often what's happening below that very high social stratum, but it is happening. Absolutely. Rome is a huge city, 1 million people. And it's not really policed at all. There are the Praetorian Guards who protect the emperor's life. There are the Vigiles, these night watchmen who keep fires from spreading. But really, it's kind of the Wild West. And so we assume that this one brief mention of guilds of criminals in the reign of Augustus is the tip of the iceberg that we probably will never see in its entirety because we don't have the evidence for it.
So the watchmen that would make sure fires were spreading, like if you were getting mugged, they'd probably just be like, it's not a fire.
Yeah, sucks to suck, bro.
Yeah.
They probably would stop crimes. They were thought to have a deterrent effect, that when they showed up, because they were carrying torches, they would, discourage criminals from thronging the main thoroughfares. But there was no street lighting in ancient Rome until late antiquity. Even then, only a few streets. And there are only a few bands of these guys. Their main job is to look for the glow of a fire kind of, and then to call the alarm and keep it from spreading. They wouldn't actually put it out. They would just demolish the houses around that house, pull them all down. That was enough. Yeah, tough way to get woken up if your house is being demolished around you because the neighbor's house caught on fire.
They just come in with a sledgehammer and just start knocking it down, or?
Oh yeah, they had like battering rams and stuff, and they would just tear these buildings down because they had to make fire breaks. Otherwise, the fires would spread quite rapidly on summer nights when there's a strong wind.
Yeah. Huh. Actually, very relevant to what you just said about there only being certain roads that are lit up. This guy Brady has a relevant question.
Good segue.
Okay, I would like to know, were there like particularly like shitty roads in the Roman Empire where people were like, whatever you do, don't go down like I-95? Was there like renowned roads or places that you would travel that were like horrible? They were just like absolutely shitty and everyone was like, this sucks?
Like a crime alley type?
Right. Yeah. And it's like most of Rome, to judge our sources, to be honest. And there were certain neighborhoods, like the Suburra, which is sort of behind the Forum, is a famously, if not squalid, kind of working class, let's say, and a very gritty working class kind of neighborhood. In general, most of the elites live on top of the hills, where there's a nice breeze, there are fewer mosquitoes, the shit's rolling downhill at least. And so you want to be on the crest of the slopes. In the valleys is where most of the poorer areas are. And there's no zoning in ancient world. So there's kind of mansions next to tenements, next to factories, next to, everything else you can imagine. But in general, it's kind of the valley bottoms where it's the wettest, where it's the darkest, most pestilential, that the worst areas tend to be. Outside Rome, certain areas are famous for their bandits. So you don't want to be anywhere in the mountains, for example, because the mountains are hard to police. And people will strike down, they'll pounce upon travelers in the highways, either ransom them or kill them for their money. And so it's hard to travel in the Roman world, even at the height of the empire. And in Rome itself, as I said before, there's just dangerous places everywhere. Unless you are rich and have the protection of being rich and therefore having people around you, guards, slaves, litter bearers, whatever else, you are vulnerable to being attacked.
There was actually a moment in here where you're talking about an engineer that was contracted out to go work on something, and he went to go do it, and he's like, "Hey guys, this is how you do it," and then he leaves, gets word that they had a hold up, and then on his way back to go help him, he gets mugged and beat up or something.
He had a really bad day. It's great. It's a very human story. It's a city in what's now Algeria, kind of the middle of nowhere. And they're trying to build an aqueduct tunnel through a mountain. And they did a terrible, so he came, he surveyed the line of the aqueduct, showed him where to dig, and then left. And then 8 years later, gets a notice from these guys, hey, we kind of missed the tunnel. We're just digging into the mountain now. And so he has to show up and correct their surveying, and he gets beat up on the way over, and all the stuff is taken. All the instruments are stolen too. So he's kind of showed up in the city and has to correct things. But he's obviously feels compelled to write about this in his inscription when he comes back to his camp. That's why we know all about all this. So he was still pissed off years later when he wrote this inscription down. I fixed the aqueduct, but on the way, these jerks.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, if that's his. I don't know if that would be his career magnum opus or whatever, his big defining moment in his life. But I wonder, have you ever seen that movie, The Revenant?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder how many people in ancient Rome just had lives like that, where they were worth making a movie about, but we just don't know about them because, it didn't survive. But this guy going all the way out there, getting his ass kicked and then having to crawl back.
Yeah. There are so many great stories we know from 2 sentences in ancient sources. We wish we had so much more. There was this slave girl named Musa who became the queen of the Parthian Empire, which is Rome's eastern neighbor. She was sent by Augustus with this other troop of slaves, as a gift to the Parthian king. And she was so charming that she won the heart of the Persian king and became the mother of the next Persian king of kings, who is ruling Rome's arch rival. The son of a slave, a Roman slave, becomes the next Parthian king. Another random slave gets washed up in Sri Lanka, of all places, and learns the local language and becomes the guy who pioneers Rome's trade with India. So all these people we know just from these very brief notices in ancient sources had these incredible lives that we can't really reconstruct, unfortunately.
Yeah, I did. One of the most badass things that I've heard is, I think it was pretty late in Rome's timeline, but one of the Roman emperors ended up getting killed in battle, and then I think it was like they were fighting somebody in Bulgaria or something like that. They ended up using his skull as a cup, and I had always thought that was like something from like Conan the Barbarian style, like just stuff out of movies. The fact that an actual Roman emperor's head was used as a cup is pretty badass. That's pretty badass.
It is, yeah. That's Emperor Nicephorus. This is in like the 8th century, late 8th century. Or sorry, 9th century. And so this is the Byzantine Empire, but it's still Roman, East Roman. And Khan Krum, which is a very Conan the Barbarian name.
Yeah, that's an awesome name. Khan Krum.
Khan Krum had Nicephorus' skull made into a goblet.
Who was he?
So Bulgaria was bigger than the modern country of that name. It was their eastern neighbor, or their western neighbor. It kind of ruled this large area of the Balkans. And all of the Bulgarian Tsars, the ones who invent that title too, by the way, they wanted to take Constantinople because it's the richest city in the world. It's right down there to their southern border. And there were all these wars between the Bulgars and the barbarians, the Bulgars and the Byzantines, over what's now kind of roughly the Turkish-Bulgarian border, a little bit north of there. Eventually, the Byzantines actually win. They will conquer all of Bulgaria and make it part of their larger empire in the Middle Byzantine period. But for a while, they were actually at the gates of Constantinople. So actually, the same Khan who killed Nicephorus, then besieged Constantinople and was furiously killing, offering human sacrifices to the gods of the Bulgarians on hills outside the city to try and bring the walls down. It didn't work, but he tried.
I wonder, how do you do stuff like that and go like, I'm the good guy. You know what I mean? Like drinking out of someone's skull.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You'd at least say I'm the badass.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? You just say this, like, you know what? I won.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know who I am.
I know. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm the skull cup guy.
Yeah.
It's what I am.
Yeah.
Speaking of praying to other gods, I highlighted that in the how different were the Greek and Roman gods. I thought it was interesting that. Because, I always thought, there's, it's the same, just different names, or like little differences. But the pure amount of minor gods the Romans had, you were talking about the doorway, and like the hinges and the threshold, and the manuring god, and there's something for everything. And then also, like, the Romans worship the gods of all. Everyone else worships their own gods. It would just be so brutal to have the Romans show up and then they pray to your god.
Oh yeah,
and then kick your ass. Like they're taking your thing.
Well, they actually had a ritual. So they would show up outside your city and actually call your gods to their side. They'd say,
"That's so fucked
up." Say, "Hey gods, join the winning team. We're going to kill all these people. We're going to win this war. What do you say? You ever come over to us, give us your support, and I'll give you a little bit of worship, on the side. What do you say, guys?" It was called immocatio. It was a whole ritual. And they would do this every time they'd show up outside the city. They would call the gods to their team.
It's just got to be a morale destroyer.
Yeah.
Especially if like a little earthquake happened or something. Yeah. You're like, oh, come on.
You like trip the next day.
Our gods have left us.
Yeah, solar eclipse at the exact same time.
Right, yeah. Our gods just bounced.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how they regard their gods as, the gods, the most important gods, and that all gods are kind of the same. They have the same, at least kind of spheres of responsibility. So you can worship, Zeus and Jupiter in the same basic terms, but they're also different at the same time. So you worship the same god in a different way in a different place, or they are different gods. We aren't totally sure how they conceptualize these things, how they kind of reconcile the idea that their gods are the gods who run the universe with this multiplicity of gods who are everywhere. But in a polytheistic system, you can get away with this. It's flexible enough. It's like, okay, there's room for all. It's a big tent.
Yeah,
it's kind of awesome how they do that. I don't know. They're just like, do you think those tactics are always like they are believing in these other gods, or are they doing it as like a tactic of like, look, we just took your gods away from you? Or I think they clearly believe in a shit ton of different gods, so it's probably not far-fetched that they're like, these other people have a god. Okay, one more.
I think that they are very cautious. That they believe there can always be another god they have not yet discovered or worshipped, and their solution for all kinds of problems is to call in a new god to fix the problem. So famously, they call in Cybele, who's a goddess from what's now Turkey, at a time of plague. So, okay, well, we need a new god here to fix things. Actually, not time of plague, the time of the Second Punic War. We need to fix things. Have her show up, and give us a morale boost. So they bring in this like giant rock that was worshipped as Cybele in Asia Minor, what's now Turkey, and install it, in the Roman temple, complete with her priests who are eunuchs, who castrate themselves actually in a very bloody ritual. And they're almost like, this is really weird. We don't like this very much, but she gets the job done, Cybele. So here she is. And so they're aware of the siege things. They're aware of like the psychological effects of summoning the enemy's gods to your side. But they're also just playing it safe. They don't know if there are gods who would be a problem for them. So better to recruit them now and bring them into the team and see what works out.
That's weird that they had that mindset and knowing what they did to Jesus.
Well, if they had the idea that he was divine, they would have absolutely played it safe there too. But they got lost in the shuffle there.
Actually, this guy
did.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
I was going to say they seem to have like a big problem with the Christians because they were monotheistic and
exactly.
Oh yeah, if they wanted to join the group,
didn't want you to worship, and it's like we've got 1,000 gods, and you're over here telling us, knock knock, like one guy now, like come on.
Yeah, the idea is that the health of the empire depends on keeping the gods, however many they are, whoever they are, happy. And they're very conservative about this. They do the same rituals the same way all the time because it's worked in the past, right? And so when you innovate, if you deny those gods, deny those rituals, you are essentially saying, your empire doesn't matter. We don't care about the safety of the emperor and of his state. And
door hinges.
The door hinges. Yeah, what about the hinges? The doors should be falling left and right. And so to them, this kind of ignoring the gods, the pagan gods, is treason. You are saying, I don't care about the health of the emperor, the empire, about the continuance of the Roman state. And that's what matters more to them than, any kind of theology.
When Christianity started like having a big influx, because I kind of forgot, it talked about they gave basically like there were 2 emperors in a row or something that were like, my bad. Well, they didn't apologize, but they, they gave tolerance. Were these emperors still being like deified at that time, or because wouldn't that directly contrast?
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting kind of halfway house in the 4th century. So Constantine, the first Christian emperor, definitely is Christian, but at the same time, he appears as the sun god, Apollo, on his coins. Long after he converts, he actually has himself shown as the sun god in Constantinople. There's a statue of him naked as Apollo. There on this giant column in Constantinople. But the crowns, this big flaring solar crown that he wears, each one of those flares of bronze that symbolize the sun has a little nail from the crucifix, supposedly, of Jesus embedded in it. So he kind of has it both ways. He's Apollo, but at the same time, he's a Christian. And there are temples in Constantinople, the supposedly Christian city, to the old gods. I once went to Constantine's villa in a place called Mediana in Serbia, and there, right next to the main courtyard, are these shrines to the old pagan gods, to Hermes, to Asclepius. And so even though he himself became a Christian, one feels that at his heart, he was still kind of playing it safe. Yeah. He was not saying, you can't be a pagan. And in his heart, he probably thought, well, let's not disrespect the old gods.
Yeah.
But later on, they became much less tolerant and kind of insisted on the old temples being closed down and, only one religion for one empire.
I think you touched on that too. Like there was a political aspect of unity.
Always. Yeah, that if you are, if you're Constantine, you might be a Christian, but you're an emperor first. And so if you are going to be a Christian, there'd be one kind of Christianity. So you can't have all these heretics running around saying, actually, we believe this, we believe that. There has to be one unified front to keep everyone on the same Roman page.
Well, anything to preserve that toilet with the moat around it in my big palace. I'll be like, whatever the fuck you guys want to, whatever you want to do out there. Okay, I'll play. Look, I'm a Christian on the coin, but also I'm kind of Apollo.
Double the gladiator fight.
Yeah. Yes.
So whatever you guys want.
Protect the marble seat at all costs.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got a great question from Tyler that's very relevant.
Oh, sure.
Good afternoon, Dr. Garrett Ryan. I hope you're having a good day. I'm at work. It's hot. I'm a heavy equipment operator, not a trucker, but hopefully I get some respect. Anyways, I was just curious, how did the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, did that have any correlation at all with the fall of Rome? or did that not really matter? All right. Thank you.
I mean, that's a hard question to answer in some ways. So leaving aside any kind of theological angle to it, the idea is the fact that the empire became Christian, does that affect its fall in some way? And there's kind of two ways to look at that. In one sense, it does kind of weaken the empire, and that it creates new lines of fraction. Because if you're the emperor now, you got to protect an orthodoxy. There has to be one kind of Christianity that everyone has to believe in, as we were just saying. So if you have subjects who are heretics, they are now not loyal subjects. They are enemies within. And so it creates new kinds of internal conflict, I would say, if the emperor is Christian. But at the same time, it does create a much more uniform and a much more powerful ideology for the empire than the old pagan gods had ever been. Because for the pagan gods, it didn't really matter if you believed in them. It is kind of what you did for them that was the heart of the religion. It was these public sacrifices and ceremonies. And in a way, the only unifying principle was the emperor himself, who was worshipped as a kind of quasi-god. If you have this ideology, Christianity, that is all-encompassing, it's universal, there's one God, there's one emperor under that one God, and he enforces a kind of moral code that, it has a potential to give you eternal salvation, that's a much more powerful thing than the old pagan theology had been. And the Byzantine Empire survives for about 1,200 years after it becomes Christian, the Eastern Roman Empire. So obviously that doesn't make it fall apart. In fact, it is its mainstay for a long time. It kind of holds together because it is Orthodox Christian. It's how it defines itself. So I guess that Christianity is neither for the empire's survival a good or a bad thing. It's just a new factor. And it creates both new kinds of strength for the empire, but also new potential sources of weakness that in the Western Roman Empire's case help it to fall apart in some ways. But in the Eastern Roman Empire's case, do give it a new lease of life in the Middle Ages.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like to, you touched on how the Romans, it was like very transactional, their relationship with the gods. Mm-hmm. And you put some quotes like, what I do for you, you will do for something like that.
Yeah, do ut des is the Latin, I give so that you will give.
Yeah, it's like very...
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to think about like people not really caring or believing, but just being like, my crop's gonna grow this year. Like I'll kill this cow or something.
In a way, it's kind of how most people today even think about religion.
I was going to say, you could kind of say it's kind of like
right.
Religion.
You might have a vague idea about the theology, and you might respect the moral code, but ultimately, for many people, it's sort of that this. First of all, it's both traditional. It's what I've done for a long time. It's what my family has done, and also has in theory some practical benefits. And so for the Romans, they did believe, most of them, we think, in the gods, at least in some vague way. They kind of wouldn't conceptualize a universe that had no gods. It was hard for them to think about that. Yeah. Even the Epicureans were called atheists by other Greeks and Romans. But at the same time, how you relate to them, there's not an expectation that if you're a good person, the gods respect you. Listen, the gods are kind of living in their own sphere. They have different rules, basically. And they might enforce those rules, certain of those rules, like Zeus protects being a good host, for example. If you kill your guests, it's a bad look for the gods. That hubris in the Greek world is a bad thing. Overreaching, the gods do in some way dislike mortals who are too proud or arrogant. But at the same time, they don't enforce any clear moral code.
Unless you're rich enough.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I guess a much more practical approach, at least in its public face, than Christianity becomes anyway.
What would you give as like a like an offering to, let's say, like the god of hinges or the god of like, would you have to sacrifice
a little bit of grease, right,
or something like?
There's a whole,
because it would have to be something that is worth less than a hinge for me. So it'd be like I'd be giving an offering of almost nothing.
Like not a chicken.
Yeah, not a chicken. No.
Like an egg.
It's calibrated both to how important the god is and how rich you are. And so like the cheapest animal offering is a piglet, usually a piglet or a chicken. Because pigs reproduce prolifically, piglets are cheap, they're transportable. And so you might use one of those or a chicken later on. But a goat's pretty cheap too, a sheep's a little more expensive. Only if you're rich, though, do you kill a cow, for example. Cow is really hard to raise in the Mediterranean. And so if you have a cow, you want to keep that for its milk. But if you're very wealthy, you'll sacrifice 100 cows. It's a hecatomb. That's the most high-end sacrifice.
100 cows to the god of hinges.
Right. Yeah. You'll have doors for life.
Tutinous.
from mutinous
Would it be
tunas.
disrespectful to like sacrifice a rat or something?
Well,
like
the idea is that
a marmot?
gods, or a marmot, yeah. The gods demand certain kinds of animals. Either they're like
Okay.
animal that's like their patron animal, or it's an animal that's worked in the past. So like to Mars, you might kill a dog, for example. It's the only one that demands dogs. To the gods of the underworld, so it's a black animal, like a black cow, a black goat. Because they
Rat.
live, in the underworld. Yeah, the rats. I don't know. I can't think of a rat sacrifice, but it's two birds in one
Like,
stone.
I just
right?
didn't know if that'd be like, well, there's rats everywhere.
Yeah.
I
It's an easy
sacrificed some
sacrifice.
cockroaches,
Right.
a couple
Yeah,
cockroaches
he
and a rat.
just gets smitten at that point, just straight out. Yeah, the rat guy gets nowhere.
It's all I got. It's the only thing I got on hand.
Come on, I'll give you a hecatomb of rats.
Not bad. It's better than one chicken.
Like,
Were there any like serial killer types like back then?
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking like if someone was to, kill, like serial killers usually start out by like torturing animals.
Mm-hmm.
And then if someone caught them, they'd be like, this is a sacrifice to like the gods, That's why
we all do.
That's
it.
why I crucified this rat on a stick.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it awoken any serial killers.
yeah.
I mean, they definitely existed. I did a video on this years ago, looking at the very, very stray bits of evidence that we have for this. And there are bandits, for example, who are accused of being serial killers, who will torture people for no reason when they catch them on the roads. And they become notorious for this reason. And there are all kinds of weird murders in Rome that are reported just in passing that may have been, caused by somebody like this. But the thing is that it's kind of like organized crime. We just don't have records of this stuff. The historians are talking about palace intrigues. They aren't worried about the guy who's probably killing 100 plebes, in a month or something. But like to give you an example, we hear once Pliny the Elder, who writes this natural history encyclopedia in the 70s AD, writes just kind of in passing about a giant snake in Rome that could eat children. Just kind of in passing. It's like, wait, what? It's a giant kid-eating snake in Rome and no one talks about this? It might have been a python from India that someone brought with and got loose or something. But so things like this, that there can be a giant, man-eating python in Rome, and we hear one sentence about it by accident in one source. So I'm sure there were mass murderers who just have been forgotten.
Yeah. Huh. I do like that he just kind of references that as like,
I'm not a child. I'm the elder.
Yeah.
I'm plenty old.
I'm the elder, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, like as if he's writing about something and then he just goes, like that child eating snake that we all know about.
Right,
actually, we don't all know about it. Actually, if you could go
like
back
the rat
to that.
king in the aqueduct.
Exactly.
It's
Right.
forming, growing every day.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I got a question here about aliens from Mr. Poop Butt Dick Shitter 4000.
All right.
Hello, boys, and Dr. Garrett Ryan. I got a very small question. Did the Romans or Greeks ever believe in aliens? Like not exactly little green men, but did they believe people were living in the sky other than like the gods or like the, like spirits or stuff like that? That'd be crazy.
Thank you, Mr. Poop Butt Dick Shitter 4000.
He's not wrong. That would be crazy. It's kind of interesting how they thought about the universe. They thought that the gods, either they lived on the planets or they were the planets. They had kind of this weird idea about what the planets were. There were 7 planets to their idea. The wanderers, as the Greek means. So that's the planets from Mercury through Saturn, and the sun and moon are their planets, and the Earth's at the center. And the thing that things do live on them, but it's either the gods, the dead sometimes are on the moon in some ideas, that the spirits of the dead go to the moon and they're purified there by the sunlight and then come back to Earth. There are other ideas about supernatural beings. Some philosophies, like the Epicureans, believe there are infinite worlds beyond our solar system, so that there are many other planets. But they don't really speculate about life on those planets. They just that there are other worlds. They wouldn't rule it out as an inherent impossibility, but the idea of traveling through space, that was sort of outside their ken. They never really imagined that. There have been people who've tried to find accounts of flying saucers in Roman sources, for example. Like there's this account from the 2nd century BC about flaming shields in the sky That might have been like lenticular clouds. It might have been volcanic debris. We don't know what it was, but some people tried to see in that flying saucers. And so it's kind of, their thought world is an extend to spaceships that they can't really imagine that. We have science fiction, sort of. This guy, Lucian, I mentioned before, right, in the 2nd century AD, talks about going to the moon in this kind of very, kind of comedic way. He doesn't really think it's possible. But they could imagine it in that sense, but never really thought about travelers from other worlds coming in this high-tech, very 20th century way that we might imagine now.
The was there like a, from a normal person's perspective, how much could they travel? I'm talking like if you just decided randomly to, hey, I want to go to this city, could you just get up and go, or how constricted were you?
If you had money, you could go almost anywhere. It's always the financial side that constricts people. It's hard to travel. You move slowly in the ancient world. You move maybe 15 miles a day by road. If you're on the sea, it's faster, but you can only travel during the summer months when the weather's pretty good and the winds are cooperative. If you are rich enough, though, to have income you're not worried about, like passive income, you have estates all over the place that produces your money. Lots of rich Romans end up, hanging out in the south of Italy, around Naples, for example. They go to Greece on vacation to hang out in Athens, listen to some philosophers, talk about philosophy. They go over to Olympia to watch the games. They go to Sparta to watch, the Spartans do stuff. They go to Egypt. They love Egypt. Many wealthy Romans do Nile cruises, where they'll start in Alexandria and go down all the way to the first cataract down by Aswan, and actually shoot the rapids, the whitewater rafting. On the first cataract of the Nile. So if you're rich enough to not worry about, making money on a daily basis, you can go anywhere you want, as long as you have plenty of time on your hands and don't mind the risks of traveling. Because, of course, your ships sink, you get, those bandits on the roads might catch you. But
were there
general,
like pirates? Were there like the equivalent of, on water banditry?
Oh, yeah. So it was a huge problem in the 1st century BC. The Romans, when they were expanding, destroyed all these kingdoms that had navies that patrolled the Mediterranean. And so they left this giant void that the pirates filled for about 50 years. There were pirate fleets all over the Mediterranean. They raided Ostia, Rome's harbor, for example. They attacked sanctuaries everywhere. And they grew to be bands of thousands of men, like armies afloat that would attack cities and besiege them. Then the Romans said enough is enough, and they sent Pompey, who was like Caesar's great rival later on, to have this giant operation that sweeps the whole Mediterranean clean of pirates. He divides the Mediterranean into sections. It kind of sends a fleet to each section, and they pretty much kill every pirate they find within each section, going down east to west. And eventually he finds so many pirates, he settles them in newly founded cities in what's now Turkey. So there are pirate cities that he creates from all the refugees from his pirate sweep. After that, the Romans have 2 fleets that are both based in Italy that patrol the coasts. And these suppress piracy for a long time, about 400 years, until the Vandals, this Germanic tribe, cross from Spain into North Africa and establish themselves in what's now Tunisia and create kind of a pirate state there. So there are periods in Roman history where there are tons of pirates, under the Republic and then in the late Empire. But under the height of the empire, it's pretty safe to move on the Mediterranean.
That's cool.
That is actually really cool. That, especially like the roaming thousands of pirates, like that's awesome.
Ronin, yeah. They were really armies of pirates. Like if you go to Delos, this great sanctuary in the Aegean, it was just swarmed by pirates during this phase when they were everywhere. They took all of the offerings from the temples, they took all the gold and silver, and kind of stripped the whole island bare. There were so many of these guys.
Damn. I want to look more into I always find it interesting when you hyper focus on Roman history and then going out and just wondering what is happening in the rest of the world at these exact same times. Because I have a hard time conceptualizing what is happening in China this time, right. Or, South America.
In all kinds of ways. China, for example, is a close parallel to Rome because they had their own first empire, the Han Empire, the Qin and Han empires, forming at the same time. And it's as big as the Roman Empire, about 60 million people, give or take, about the same territorial extent, a lot of other similarities. When I was still at Michigan, I taught a class actually comparing Rome and China, these kind of parallel empires at the same time on opposite ends of Eurasia. And it can be so easy to forget that Rome is just part of this much larger world. We know more about it than we do about any other part of the world at this time, unless you read Chinese. And even then, there's just more Roman stuff. But yeah, the rest of the world, stuff is happening. We just know less about it.
Did they know about each other?
Only vaguely. So almost nobody traveled directly between Rome and China. It was just too far. The Romans sent merchants to India pretty often, and a few parties of merchants made it east from India to China. So we hear about one guy showing up at the Han Emperor's court in the reign of Marcus Aurelius and claiming to be an envoy of the emperor. And he just had some lame Indian stuff with him, like a bit of saffron, like a rhino horn. And the emperor of China was very unimpressed with this guy. And they say this in the annals pretty much that they brought poor gifts, for the emperor Antung. And the Chinese sent a guy named Gan Ying, I think it was, all the way west. He was trying to make contact with, they called the Romans Da Chin. And he made it all the way to Iraq. So, 4,000 miles across Eurasia to Iraq. And the Parthians are like, no, the Romans suck. Don't go any further. He's like, okay, fine. So he turns around.
They're losers over there.
He was about 100 miles from the Roman border at that point. He was so close. He's like, okay, fine. So he turns around. So there's never any direct contact between the Han and Roman courts. So they have rumors about each other. They're trading partners via the Silk that comes over what's becoming the Silk Road in that period. But it's not like a diplomatic contact sort of situation.
It's kind of crazy that, if they're receiving goods, you would think they would be like, where'd this come from? Mm-hmm. Oh, giant empire right over there. It's crazy that they never actually made contact, but it makes sense. It is on a pretty far distance.
Yeah.
It would take a year, more than a year, to get there from one empire to the other.
Bring a pigeon to China and then let it loose with a message.
If they can bring goods, you would think they could send a fucking letter, just like, hey, send this along. It's a scroll.
Hey, this is in Latin.
Yeah. I always wonder what language those envoys were speaking. They must have been using some Silk Road language from Central Asia that some of the Chinese court also knew.
Yeah.
But
I was going to ask that. How are they even?
Right. Yeah. We don't know.
Communicating.
Probably like Sogdian, one of these lost languages from Central Asia that the Chinese would have known from their western frontier, and the Romans, some Roman merchants would have had. I'm guessing, via their trade in that area. I don't know who in the Chinese Empire would have known Indian languages, but maybe somebody did. I guess later on, when Buddhism
show
came,
them drawings of the Colosseum.
Pretty
badass, right?
What do you say, guys?
Here's the poop buckets raining on the streets.
Yes. You come and visit. It's great.
There's a ton of rats and mosquitoes and cockroaches everywhere.
Yeah, have you guys figured out what to do with your shit buckets? Because you just chuck them out the window. Crazy.
We are drowning in that stuff.
Health.
Yeah, we can bring the water in. We can't do anything to get it back out.
After that, we're done. We're done.
I'm the God Emperor. Could you help us out a little, please?
There's a sitcom here somewhere.
Yeah. The new Rush Hour.
Here's a question from Swabby.
Hello, Dr. Garrett Ryan. I just had a question for you about the Homer's Odyssey. A new trailer just dropped, and everyone is complaining about how it is not historically accurate and that the armors aren't right for the types of metals that's being used, or the types of weapons that are being used aren't historically accurate. Some people are even complaining about the characters that are being portrayed by certain actors. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it and maybe a little bit about the Odyssey itself.
Yeah, everyone expects the historian at a movie about the Odyssey, for example, to be the killjoy. They got this wrong, they got that wrong. Yeah. This movie is unwatchable. But I try and give movies like this new Odyssey a grain of salt, the benefit of the doubt, let's say, because like Gladiator, for example, the first Gladiator movie, Russell Crowe, it's a great movie. It's historically, it's nonsense. Most of the stuff is absolutely mayhem. That is made up. The weapons they use, the storyline, Maximus himself is made up. It's all fantasy. But it's a good story, and it's told in the world that I love. And so I like it for that reason. It makes you interested in ancient Rome. And so if this new Odyssey movie gets people interested in the world of Homer's Odyssey, then I think it's great. I think it's doing what it's supposed to do. I don't care about the armor and the minutiae they're screwing up. That said, they're probably screwing it all up. Undoubtedly, that they are just trying to they're Hollywoodizing everything. They can look spectacular and big and impressive without worrying about what a Bronze Age warrior would have been using. But the thing is, the Odyssey itself is already a fantasy. It's written as we have it around 700 BC, give or take, and it's the kind of codification of much older oral poems that might date back to the Bronze Age. We're not quite sure, but it's describing events that took place about 5 centuries before it was written down. At the end of the Bronze Age. And the author obviously had no idea how warfare even worked in the Bronze Age. Like, they ride in chariots to the battlefield and then get off the chariots to fight. They don't actually fight from the chariots. He describes a weird mix of like Iron Age and Bronze Age arms and armor when he's talking about how they're fighting. It's kind of a word salad with like the people who are fighting for the Trojans and with the Trojans. And so it's always been a fantasy, the Odyssey. What makes it interesting is the characters that are created by the poet, like Odysseus himself, who are these kind of human archetypes and have such psychological depth, they make you care about them. And so I guess my take is that if this new Odyssey has that vibrancy, it kind of makes you care about Matt Damon or whoever the hell is playing Odysseus, then it's good. It's great. But yeah, it probably is nonsense. I actually haven't watched the trailers because I'm trying to keep an open mind about such things. But they probably just done like generic Hollywood ancient armor for all these things, ignoring both what we know about Bronze Age armor, which is a fair amount, and about Greek hoplite warfare, which the guy whoever Homer was, whoever wrote the Odyssey, would have kind of known in its early stages.
There's one guy that looks like he has armor from like Tron or something. Like it's
okay.
Yeah, it's like so futuristic and yet ancient in a way. Like it's too angular and too perfectly matte. It's like matte black. It looks like it's been spray painted with Rust-Oleum.
Name's Matt Damon.
It probably was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's kind of a Hollywood look that they often give to all ancient empires, from Rome, Greece, even the Odyssey's world. And it's sort of just a generic look that's not historical in any real sense, but it's what viewers expect. That's probably just what you're seeing there.
Yeah. Have you seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Years ago, yeah.
Oh, that's a great movie.
It was a good movie.
Yeah.
And that's fun, right? It's taking the same
Odyssey movie.
It is. Yeah. It's the same story.
That's my Odyssey.
And that's the thing, that you can take this storyline and kind of transpose it to a different culture, and it still works. It's still interesting.
Yeah.
It's sort of only when there's this idea that it should be right, that when you do the original story and there's the at least fantasy that they're getting it from Homer direct, that people get upset that it's it's too many liberties taken with the ancient story. Even translations, honestly, people get really upset about word choices, like, oh, this is too modern. You're doing too much with the story to make it 21st century.
Yeah. Have you, or like the Romeo and Juliet from like the mid 90s?
Oh, like the DiCaprio one?
Yeah,
like
where he's got the
stuff.
Yeah, the guns instead of swords. That fucking movie rules. So I love that movie.
I watched that in high school. It's like, I don't know if I love this or I hate this, but I can't look away.
At first I was like, nah, and then the editing is so awesome that I love it. It's like editing inspiration almost.
It's a very 90s movie.
It is, yeah.
Which for good or ill. Yeah, it's just very 90s.
Yeah.
I had to watch that in high school too, and it's like, it felt better than the alternative at that time of what they would have showed us.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a little more exciting, but I don't remember like watching it and being like, that was such a good movie.
No one comes away crying from the movie. I'm pretty sure. It's like, oh my God, I love Shakespeare so much more now. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, every staging of Shakespeare, right? They always make these choices where they put it in like 19th century England or something. And the idea is that to challenge the viewer to take this story that you might know pretty well and put it in a new thought world and say, this still works. And here's why, because this is, immortal. This is, human action at its best, or human emotion, human psychology.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as long as like the story's still good, I don't even care about the placement, like Apocalypse Now is supposed to be like Heart of Darkness.
Right.
Actually, dude, if they did the Odyssey, but just translated it to like sci-fi,
it'd be pretty hardcore.
Good work.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, I forget what it's called. I think it's Un-Iliad. It's taking the Iliad and kind of putting it in like modern PTSD, the modern war in Iraq, how this kind of same struggles can be played out in the 21st century. And so yeah, it can be very powerful, honestly, to kind of take these new settings and say, hey, look, this has the same purchase.
Yeah. But I don't know. I can't wait to see it because I love Christopher Nolan movies, to be honest. And my bar for enjoying stuff is pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not as low as Poob's, but I'll pretty much enjoy almost anything. I've watched TV with Poob, and he actually,
I can wring emotion out of anything,
dude. He'll sit there
I have my limits, but you put something on the TV in front of me, I'm gonna give it the respect it deserves from how much work got put into making it.
Yeah.
And my phone's off, and
I don't think I've ever seen someone sit there and actually point and laugh at a TV screen until I watched TV with you. It was
I think I was watching what were we watching? Like one of my favorite movies ever.
I don't know. It was like Detroiters or something, and you were like,
I thought it was
actually
they came together,
pointing and laughing.
Well, speaking of making fun of me for being a clown, dude, somebody's on my front porch. I'll be right back.
Okay. Go for
the
it.
dogs are about to start barking like crazy, so I have to mute.
Yeah, do your thing, dude, because I got some questions.
Sure, yeah.
Dr. Garrett Ryan.
Bring it on.
Okay, here's a good hypothetical that's going to get your mind going. This one's from Franco.
Hello, Dr. Ryan. I appreciate you coming on. You're really gracing us with your vast intellect and ability to clearly convey an idea.
Come on, dude.
What would happen if Rome didn't exist as an empire? Just a quick 2-minute summary. What might be, what might not be. Who would have risen to power instead? That kind of thing. Appreciate you.
That's a really interesting one. I kind of touched on this maybe a year ago. I did a video about what if Latin had never existed, like what Europe would speak now. If there's no Roman Empire, Europe is both, I would guess, not Christian, divided up into many states, probably primarily a combination of Greek and Celtic speaking languages, and just fundamentally different in almost every way we can think of. So kind of break that down a little bit. The Roman world, by creating this vast sphere in which there are really just two languages, Greek and Latin, spoken by people in cities, is both an economic free trade zone and an intellectual free trade zone. And so Christianity is only really possible the way it spreads through the empire's trade routes and out to places like Britain or Syria, only really possible because you have this very large, peaceful empire that exists for a very long time. Without that, it probably stays in Judea or in a few other cities around the Jewish diaspora that also had existed without Rome. Linguistically, of course, we have the Romance languages across Europe, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, all coming from Latin. Without the Romans, and therefore Latin spreading across Europe, those don't exist. And without the Romans conquering the peoples of Central Europe, which were largely Celtic-speaking. Celtic-speaking, there were pockets of Iberians, and then the Carthaginians, more on them in a moment. You probably have a lot of Gaelic, places like Germany and France, and even the Balkans today, even in Italy itself, quite possibly. Carthage probably would become quite powerful. They would have kept flourishing. They probably have conquered large parts of Spain, for example. So you would have kind of a Punic sphere, speaking, both Punic, these kind of Levantine languages, worshiping Moloch and whatnot. You'd probably also have a very large Greek sphere in Eastern Europe and east of there, because the Romans destroyed the world of the Hellenistic kingdoms. Those are the kingdoms founded by Alexander's successors. But if they hadn't shown up, though, places like Ptolemaic Egypt or the Seleucid Empire would probably have kept going for a long time. And so you'd have a very large part of the world that now speaks Arabic, for example, speaking Greek. And Greek also in Italy, I would guess. There are Greek colonists all throughout Italy. Without Latin pushing them down to the fringes, that Greek probably would have conquered, culturally conquered, a large part of the Italian world. So I think you would have had the lingua franca for Europe not being English as it is today, but Greek, quite probably. The Romans had never existed. The Roman Empire, by existing, just creates new conditions, allows the Germanic peoples, for example, to become much more powerful on Rome's fringes before they conquer parts of the empire and then become the dominant people in Central Europe. So just really all the rules are different without Rome. You just can't really, it's a whole different future if Rome doesn't exist in almost every possible way.
From my complete novice perspective, it seems like a lot of the cool stuff of Rome was almost directly yanked out of Greece. What about the other way? What if Greece never existed How ugly do you think Rome would end up? Like they wouldn't have any of those columns and shit.
Rome would have been ass ugly. No, Rome would have looked much more like. So Rome's neighbors were also Hellenized at the same time Rome was. They also drew upon the Greeks. The Greeks were so impressive. They had this fully formed culture, and there were Greek colonies up and down Italy that they could, trade with and learn from. Without that, if they developed on their own terms, it's kind of hard to imagine Rome without Greece, to be honest, because there are Greeks in Rome from the very beginning. We find Greek pottery in the very lowest strata in the Forum. So they were aware of Greek ideas. So they would have been a much more, I don't know, they would have had much less ambitions culturally, because the Roman culture, everything from poetry to sculpture, is an imitation of the Greeks in the beginning. That's the model they're trying to imitate and surpass if they can. And they wouldn't have had that model. They had their own native poetry, but even their gods have been very different. They would have had this kind of ill-defined group of agricultural gods for the most part.
Door-hinged god.
Door-hinged god would have been like a giant temple in Britain or something. There would have been. They were still probably would have been warlike. They would have had the same aristocracy that drove their combat and their conquests, but they would not have been, as they became, kind of this transmitter of culture to the rest of Europe, of literary culture. It's kind of hard to imagine how different their whole cultural outlook would have been, because, like I said, when we first see the Romans in the 3rd century BC, they're already so Hellenized. It's kind of hard to imagine that away.
Yeah.
So it's a really good question, honestly. I mean, the Etruscans, who are the pre-Roman people that the Romans replace across Italy, are also very, very Greek. They're very Hellenized at the same time the Romans are. But it might have looked more like them. Maybe they were a less centralized power, more city-states. But it's hard to say, honestly, how much the inspiration in Greece and the challenge of Greece kind of drove the Romans to become what they did. Because I think it was fundamental. We kind of can't really see Rome without that.
Yeah.
They still be sipping on wolf milk.
Exactly, right, yeah. Wolf sippy cup,
Yeah. Everyone's got a mom wolf.
Yeah, right. Offering that to the door hinge guy, Yeah, it would have been a whole thing.
I've got a cockroach and a little bit of wolf's milk for you here.
What do you say?
The when I think of Greek architecture, you said they culturally they were already kind of mature by the time Rome came along. You mentioned in here for a second that early Greek temples were just kind of like mud brick walls, and even their statues, their statues of their gods were just kind of roughly made. And it wasn't until they got in contact with Egypt that they're like, oh shit, you can make stuff out of rocks.
Yeah, whoa.
Yeah, and it's very, I don't know, it's almost like I couldn't imagine a Greek temple not being made of columns and stone and everything. How long of a time period were they kind of roughing it with wood structures like that?
Yeah, so at the time, the Greece of Homer, the Bronze Age Greece, was the Mycenaeans. It was the civilization that was based in the Peloponnese, the south of Greece, and they had these gigantic palaces with these huge stone walls around them. And they had pretty impressive temples. I think they were kind of part of their palaces, because the kings were also the priests in that society, we assume. But the Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BC destroys the civilization. They forget how to write. They loot the temples. The palaces fall into ruin. And so Greece has a long dark age, about 4 centuries long, from which they start to emerge around 800 BC, give or take. And so it's really that period, we call it the Archaic period, between about 800 BC and about 500 BC, when the Greeks rise from being this very, by later standards, kind of unsophisticated people to this incredibly culturally sleek civilization that so impresses the Romans and their neighbors. And so it's kind of forced evolution in some way, because they're coming in contact from a very early stage with these much more sophisticated, much older Eastern civilizations like Egypt, like Babylon, like the Assyrians. And they see this stuff. The Greeks are from the beginning, merchants, traders. They're so close to the sea by virtue of their topography. They see these things and they're inspired to kind of creatively reinvent them. Everything from architecture to even their epics. The Iliad is inspired in some ways, Greek mythology is based in some ways, on much older Near Eastern models. So as the Romans imitated the Greeks themselves imitated these older Near Eastern civilizations. It's kind of this chain. No one's reinventing the wheel entirely. They're kind of they are reinventing it. They're taking the wheel and saying, let's add a spoke here, a spoke there, let's paint it red. It's a different cultural package, but it's one that gets the seeds of a lot of its key features from elsewhere. And that's true, of course, across world history.
Is there anybody, like, let's say like ancient Egypt, did they have anybody that they turned to and were like, I'm taking that idea. That rocks.
Aliens.
Yeah, aliens. Well, the Egyptians supposedly get their chariots from the Hyksos. It's like New Kingdom Egypt has those badass war chariots you see, like in their reliefs. Mm-hmm. Those are borrowed, we think, from Egypt's own conquerors in the Middle Bronze Age. But yeah, if you're Egypt or if you're Sumeria or something, if you're at the very beginnings of civilization, then yes, it matters less. You kind of are we call it sui generis. You're kind of born from your own civilizational roots. But the Romans and Greeks are latecomers. They're showing up in the Iron Age, and they have all of this debris, all of this built up knowledge and culture of these older Eastern civilizations, which they draw from selectively. So we shouldn't say even the Romans just copy the Greeks, but they do remake Greek civilization in their own image, borrowing what they can and kind of remaking what they can't.
It's crazy how vast all these histories are compared to like America.
Yeah. Yes. And we are 250 this year, Yeah. Which is still cool, but it's a very deep history.
I mean, even in relation to like us versus, like, I have a British friend that he's like, the church I went to growing up is like 750 years old. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if I go to the antique store, I can't find anything over 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And then, even in compared to, the stuff in his town versus Greece, it's nothing,
Yeah, my wife is British, and she used to sing in a church choir in a church that was from like the Norman period, just like hanging out in a church that was like from 1100. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's, my country is a third that age, not even.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, the depth of time.
Yeah. Do you think there's any like civilizations that you think have been lost? Like a pocket of something where you're like, maybe like an influence on another culture where you're like, I don't think they made that. I think that's from something in the past that has been washed away to time.
Well, even the Etruscans I mentioned before, they're very well attested, well known, but their language is pre-Indo-European, and we have no idea where it came from. Almost all the other languages of Italy and the Mediterranean belong to the Indo-European family, which kind of is born in the steppes of Ukraine, more or less, about 6,000 years ago, and branches out gradually from there, for everything from migration to conquest and kind of trade even. But the Indo-Europeans, the Latin is Indo-European, so other languages that are related to Latin, Greek is as well, but Etruscan is not. And its only relatives are spoken in like some islands in the Aegean and other places east of there. And so the Romans themselves were puzzled by this. They're like, where the hell did this language come from, the Etruscan language? And they thought the Etruscans were migrants from the east. They weren't. They probably just stayed in place. And as these new languages came around, and they kept speaking their old language, which dates back to who knows how long, back in the Stone Age at some point, and just kind of their language is a relic, kind of like Basque is in modern Spain. Things like that. And there are so many civilizations that are just names to us. The Romans might mention a people, a tribe, or a language that we just have nothing from. The Romans did not preserve, by and large, the literatures, if they existed, of the peoples they conquered. So from Carthage, we had these giant libraries. They kept one agricultural treatise because it was useful, and they destroyed all their literature, all of their poetry, all of their songs. That's all gone. And so the Romans themselves are responsible in many ways for wiping the slate of what came before, both deliberately when they conquer people and accidentally by making this kind of monoculture where there's one dominant language, Latin, over a huge part of Eurasia. And so everyone learns that language. They forget what comes before. And we have archaeology to correct some of that. We have, we find the pottery of an older civilization or other traces of it. But we just can't animate those bones very well because it's just, we just have these bare fragments. And the culture that lay behind them has all been wiped off the map 2,000 years ago or more.
It's weird how they seem to, I don't want to say like covet, but they do look at people that they assimilate into their culture and go like, oh, I'm going to take this and that because it's awesome. But at the same time, they go, I'm only taking this agricultural thing, and then the rest of it is getting burned. It's weird how it's like that selective, you know?
Yeah, and normally it's not like they're trying to destroy it. There's some things they do attack, like the druids they hate because the druids both practice human sacrifice, which they're not really into, and they're political leaders. They have a lot of power in their society, so they wipe out the druids wherever they find them. But in general, they're not really targeting other cultures' beliefs. Like they don't bother Judaism, for example, which has been around for a long time before the Romans show up. They only worry if you're seditious, if you're undermining their empire in some way. And they only care about your stuff, though, if it's useful to them. So it's a very kind of utilitarian view of the world. That if you can help Rome, okay, welcome to the pack. You're in. But if it's not useful to us, if they don't destroy it, they'll just kind of discard it. They won't bother preserving it. They won't try to, commemorate it in any way. They aren't interested, for the most part, in history for its own sake, the way that modern scholars are. They care about their own history, which includes Greek history, which includes Etruscan history, maybe a little bit, but does not include, the history of some random Gallic tribe, for example.
Yeah. You mentioned druids for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I like druids, mostly from Diablo 2. But where exactly where are druids from?
Mm-hmm.
And like culturally, and what exactly was there?
Like a Scottish thing?
Here's a deal.
Yeah,
I mean, kind of. That they were the priestly caste, basically, of these Celtic peoples that lived from Ireland and Scotland all the way on down to Central Europe. So they were, we know about them from Roman sources by people like Caesar, for example, who conquers Gaul and deals with a lot of these druids who are often part of the political system of Gaul. So like the brother of a chieftain might be the head druid. We hear about, from say like Tacitus, for example, who writes his treatise about Britain, which has been conquered by the Romans by his time, about the druids of Britain, who have this like long training process. They learn. There's no written scripture for the druids. There's a lot of oral lore that they learn, passed down from like master to apprentice. So there's the priests, basically the cultic experts of the Celtic peoples, and because they have so much weight in their society, so much power, the Romans don't trust them, and they try to wipe them out. They keep the political aristocracy, the warrior aristocracy. They can work with those guys, but these priests they don't trust, and so they kind of remove their power and try and decapitate them pretty much wherever they encounter them.
And they did human sacrifices?
The druids did, yes. So like as Caesar describes the original Wicker Man, like from that old horror flick, where like they bind prisoners inside a giant figure of wooden straw and light it up as a sacrifice to the gods. Supposedly on the Isle of Anglesey and at the west of Britain, the Romans found a grove where the branches are draped with human entrails from sacrifices. It might be, barbarian baiting to some degree, where they're kind of tarring them all with the same brush, that they're all, awfully inhuman and they're killing people left and right. But they pretty clearly did practice human sacrifice. Some of the bog bodies they find in Britain, these guys preserved by like the chemicals in the bogs for thousands of years, were human sacrifices that were probably victims of the druids.
Yeah. Well,
I read some like book about Hadrian's Wall. That was a historical fiction that I got at some like small town bookstore.
Uh-huh.
It was like $3. And boy, they hated druids and that. A lot of problems with druids up there. Boy.
Was that like the Eagle of the Ninth or something? That's one of the famous books.
Honestly, I can't remember. I remember Sam had just brought up Hadrian's Wall like multiple times, and I was on a family vacation like Virginia, and I just grabbed like 5 random books, and that was one of them, and it was honestly pretty good, but it wasn't a book that like wasn't like the best book I've ever read or anything.
It was a book.
It didn't stick with me.
It was no leaky aqueducts.
Good
battle
quote.
pigeons and mystery cults.
That's right.
I didn't highlight, I don't think, a single phrase in that other book.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't
no dog ears.
But yeah, they're easy to demonize. The Romans do demonize them, but they're probably just part of the society. The religious experts of that society.
Okay. They, in Diablo, they turn into like werewolves and stuff. So I didn't know if there was
that's
cool.
Yeah. That's useful.
Yeah.
Could they do that?
Yeah.
I mean, to our knowledge, it's not recorded. So, I confirm or
they probably wouldn't want, the Romans probably wouldn't want to write that down.
Probably not. Yeah. It makes them look pretty bad. So we'll assume it was probably possible.
Yeah.
I could turn it into a bear. Scratch that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not making the final cut.
Well, do you have any closing anythings to say, Poob, or Dr. Garrett Ryan?
Well, I saw on the back of this book, it says, just at the very end, just very quick, he lives in Chicago, period.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Chicago's pretty cool.
Yeah, but born and bred, yeah. And I'm actually in the suburbs now. I'm in the north suburbs, but, Chicagoland anyway.
Yeah, it's not really a big comment I had, but I like Chicago. I go there a lot because it's being from Indiana. It's like the real big city.
What address?
Yeah, what house?
Yeah, where can we
Can I come
find
over?
you?
Yeah, what are your top 3 fears, and do you leave any windows open?
Yeah, of these snakes, which? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd say this in closing that the Romans, they're like us, they're not like us, but it's that the fascination of trying to kind of negotiate between this basic humanity that we share with them, and their often deeply weird history and culture. And so if you like that stuff, check out Leaky Aqueducts. It's a fun book. But it's been fun answering these questions, honestly, guys. So thanks for inviting me here.
And
thank you.
Thank you for coming here. And thank
fun.
the patrons for sending in all the questions, guys. They sent in literally 300 something questions.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I most of them were, 1, things that we had already covered, so I had to cut those out. 2, you guys were pretty vulgar sometimes, and I had to cut those out. And then there was some that, a lot of similar questions, but I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. I did save the cream of the crop and presented those to Dr. Garrett Ryan, but
I didn't hear the one with the funny voice talking about ore, but yeah, well,
we'll
if you
go
want to
do one last one, we do have
Sure.
one from Prospector Jim before we
All right.
wrap up.
Let's do it.
Well, howdy, boys. Prospector Jim here. Me and my crew is headed down to the Big Boot in the water to do some prospecting, and we just want to ask Mr. Ryan, what kind of luxury ores did the ancient Romans mine?
Well, that is a good
shit,
question.
I gotta go. Johnny just got crushed by a sagging timber.
You much more fun patrons than I do, to be honest. Yeah, they're all like, Dr. Ryan, you got something wrong in the last video. The Romans mined principally gold and silver, as you'd expect. The most famous mines were in Spain and in Dacia, what's now Romania. Supposedly, actually, when they conquered Dacia, the last king of Dacia, this guy named Decabalus, hid hundreds of tons of gold beneath a river, and then he committed suicides. They didn't know where it was, but they ended up torturing nobles. So they found the stash of gold. They mined also copper, as you'd expect. They had to import most of their tin as they conquered Britain. There's the mines of Cornwall. I guess a little bit of zinc here and there, when the mood was right. But mostly what you expect, the precious metals that provide their currency, and useful metals like iron, copper, and zinc. And we actually have some mines still intact. I mentioned before these Las Medulas mines in Spain. There are in Romania also all these Roman tunnels you can still go into, actually. Those are Roman gold mines also, deep into these mountains. They had... to pump out water, these slave-worked water wheels, like giant hamster wheels with buckets, they would pump out the water from up to 200 feet underground. Yeah. And we hear from Pliny that there were certain tunnels that went miles into the mountains. There were huge galleries. So there probably are mines still waiting. Roman mines had not been reopened that we could probably discover today. It was a massive operations. They're all government-owned for the most part, but then got let out to contractors and worked by a mix of free and slave labor.
Huh. In this book, you mentioned travertine a lot, and I had no idea what the hell travertine was, and I thought it was terrazzo, and I was like, I love mid-century homes with terrazzo floors, and I was like, whoa, they had terrazzo floors? It's so awesome. So I was imagining all these beautiful palaces with terrazzo floors, and I was like, that is incredible. I had no idea they had such style, and then it turned out it was a completely different thing. So.
Yeah, it's just limestone pretty much. I mean, nice limestone. It's from Tivoli, kind of near Rome. But yeah, and actually there are sometimes chips of travertine in terrazzo floors. So there's some crossover.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, that was our final question. We're gonna let you go now. And thank you so much for coming on. And that should sate the patrons' thirst for good guests.
Yeah. All right,
guys. 5 more months of bad to no guests.
Well, thanks so much, Sam and Poop. I had a great time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.